Welcome, everybody. We are here at Living Chassidus, and we are so lucky. It's really a huge schos. We've been trying to organize with Rabbi Kaplan, and by amazing hashgacha pratis, he was able to actually finally make it to the U.S. And not only that,
I was in the U.S. for a very short period of time. I've been in Crown Heights the whole time, but just very little to do
with the U.S. Yes. He's been in the Crown Heights section. So I want to first of all give a special thank you to Chai Mashkake, to Shena Bracha, and to Bracha Zerkind. And we are so lucky that they came and they helped set up. So thank you very, very much. I also want to make a huge thank you to our leadership team, who is incredible at making things in general happen. So thank you to them. And I want to make a special thank you to Rabbi Kaplan. He changed his ticket to be here with us. So that is a huge schus. Which is funny because in the present that I got, there's actually a present for your wife. This is for your wife. When she lights Shabbos candles, she can put the candle.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
On the tray. So that is for her, and another book for her. Yes. So please send her our ginormous thank you. And this is regards from Crown Heights.
Thank you very much.
And with that, Rabbi Kaplan is here. I know everybody already knows who he is. He's an incredible teacher. He actually Farbrengen for me once, changed my life. I spoke about it on the car right here. And Swas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're amazing. And he was involved with my husband. And
Can we? This is getting recorded, right?
Yes, this is getting recorded.
Send this to my wife?
Yes, you can. This is recorded
Out of all of this.
just for her.
Talk like this. I just want to get something.
Yes. And not only is he an incredible teacher in the seminary in Yerushalayim, he's also teaches for the Mayano Institute, which has made a huge impact on many guys that I've helped with shidduchim. And he is also the father of my son's Rabbi. So his good education, his good chinuch is then educating my son. So thank you very much on behalf of our entire family.
Can I just leave this here? I don't have to put it here, right? I feel like I'm on CBS or something. That means I have to lie. I want to tell the truth. I don't want to have to lie.
There you go.
Right? Yeah, okay, we'll do it like this. I've done this with these pros, they're right now. You do it like this. You need to do it like that. Something like that.
I think that might. You want to put it maybe on the.
What I didn't want to do, but okay. Yeah. Stick it there.
There you go.
Okay. Don't anybody look. Why is this here? Because people from there can't hear me? You can. There you go. So we don't need this at this point. When the multitudes start coming in and they're looking in the window, so we'll have we'll put a speaker outside. I think that we can do away with this one. L'chaim. It is a pleasure, I must say, to finally get this done. There was a lot of. Sometimes you find out that things are important because the Kadosh Baruch Hu makes it difficult for them to happen. The idea was actually to come to Crown Heights for Shavuos, but then a war broke out in Eretz Yisrael, and most flights were canceled. The flight I was on was canceled. It was actually the first one canceled. The flight that day went, and the flight that night did not go. So it was all obviously preordained. And having not been here for a very long time, those of us who don't live here or don't live in America, b'chlal, so coming to Crown Heights has been extremely difficult the last year and a half. It was all, the only way to come here from Eretz Yisrael was if you were willing to take 3 weeks off work. Most of us can't do that. I don't know anybody who, I know one person who did because he didn't really have to take time off work because he could work from home. And so he came for Gimel Tamuz last year and then went home and spent 2 weeks in his house in what's called bidud, quarantine, which they're serious about in Eretz Yisrael. I mean, they were, unlike here. I heard there is such, theoretically, there's such a thing here, but I don't know whether it has any reality in Eilam Hazeh. But in Israel, they actually take it very seriously. Our son came in the middle of the year and was in bidud. At one point, he was in our house. He got a phone call, and a policeman said, "Is this Yosef Yitzhak Kaplan?" He said, "Yes." "Where are you?" He said, "I'm in my house." "Okay. Can you go to the back porch, please?" So he said, "Okay." He went to the back porch. "Did you see that nayedet, that police car on the street? Could you wave to us, please?" So he waved. The cop said, they really were checking up on everybody. And it was, yeah, absolutely. But in all fairness, rightly or wrongly, I have no idea. I have never, ever been responsible for dealing with a pandemic. I hope never to be anybody responsible for dealing with the pandemic, whether they did it the right way or the wrong way. Obviously, there's all sorts of people who said what they did with these lockdowns, all was absolutely the wrong thing to do. There's other people who say, well, look at the numbers, it worked. But bottom line, and now in Eretz Yisrael, there's no such thing. Baruch Hashem, everything's opened up, everything's fine. People are walking around. And I think tomorrow, any vestige of a mask disappears completely inside, outside, nowhere, no masks. So we're basically done. But one thing we had was school, which you also had here in Crown Heights, but the rest of America basically decided that children's education is not so important. Maybe what they're teaching them is better than that in school, but it's not good. It's not so good for children. What that meant for most of us was the inability to come to the Rebbe. That's what it meant for most of us. Couldn't get here. It's just impossible. Right? So there's an old saying that I'm sure you all know, Rebbe lo shana Chia Menayin. The Gemara asks Rebbe Yehuda Nasi was Rebbe Chia's Rebbe. And Rebbe Chia makes a statement in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, Rebbe lo shana, that Rebbe didn't teach that. Rebbe Chia Menayin. So where did he get that idea? What's the source of that halacha in Rebbe Chia? Because Rebbe didn't teach that way. That's the pshat in it. Chassidim have always understood that. Rebbe lo shana. For a year, I wasn't by the Rebbe. Chia minayin. Where does a chassid have his chayis? How was he alive? And we all dealt with that for the last year and a half now. I understand that since Gimel Tamuz, we've been dealing with that in a certain way, but chas v'sholem, v'chas v'sholem, v'chas v'sholem, to think that we don't have a Rebbe, and to think that the Rebbe is not with us wherever we are. But there's no question that there are places where we go to the Rebbe. Rebbe comes to us, is with us wherever we are. We can talk about that in an amazing story. I heard this during this whole COVID thing. But that being said, as Chassidim, we come to the Rebbe. So whatever that means now, and that's a personal choice that everybody has the right to make as to where they relate to as the place where they go to see the Rebbe. And if I can make a macha in public, don't let anybody tell you where you have to go to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's not their business. If you think it's the women's section in 770, then go there. If you think it's the oil, so go there, and don't let anybody else tell you what they think, because it's irrelevant to you. Because we live in a difficult time where we have to have a certain hergish that we never had to have, a certain feeling, a certain sensitivity to things, and where that sensitivity is heightened is a very, very personal thing. And it's no one's business. It's just, my own little, I'm what do they call it? Venting. I'm venting. So excuse my venting, but I'm venting. It's no one's business where you find the Rebbe. So some people, 770, that's where they go. Okay, that's fine. Some people go to the oil. It's fine. Good. No one has a monopoly on this. And it's difficult enough not seeing the Rebbe B'nai Basa that someone has to tell you where you have to go. I don't like people telling me where to go. Sometimes they say someone should tell that guy where to go, but we don't. But we know one thing. For us in Eretz Yisrael, it means getting on a plane. That's what going to the Rebbe means. It means getting on a plane and coming to a place called Crown Heights And either you go from there somewhere else, you know, that's it. But you go to the Rebbe. And I haven't been able to do that for a year and a half. The last time I was here was Yutes Kislev a year and a half ago. Mamish Bashkocha Pratis with incredible mazel. It just happened to be the Mayanot was making a dinner, and the powers that be asked if I would fly in for the dinner and Farbrengen after the dinner. It was fantastic. We had a great Farbrengen with all sorts of alumni in some fancy hotel in Manhattan. But say I was here for 2 days, but I was here, and since then not. And honestly, I haven't basically. I mean, maybe you can see it on my face, see it in my eyes, and hear it in my voice. I'm not sure. Maybe I just always look this decrepit. How would you know? But it's been 4 days without sleep. But that's what it means to come to the Rebbe. Why do you want to go sleep? Right? I mean, you can sleep at home. So last night I was yelled at a friend because I left for Farbrengen at 4:30 in the morning. I mean, it's 4:30 in the morning. I mean, why are you yelling at me that I'm not Beseder that? You know, if I left at 1:30, I get it. You know, you need your beauty. 4:30 in the morning. What? Where? I mean, he was very upset. What's wrong with him? Now, he had just had a little sleep in the middle of the Farbrengen. His head went down on his chest for about 45 minutes. I threw something at him. It didn't work. He was out like a light. So he had his little sleep in the middle. So maybe that's what gave him the... he might still be there. I'm not sure. When I went in this morning, he wasn't, but who knows? But maybe he was sleeping under the table. That's what Rav Mendel Futterfaus said, his l'chaim. He got engaged to a nice young lady, and there was the l'chaim, and at the l'chaim, Rav Mendel ended up sleeping under the table. This was his introduction to his father-in-law and mother-in-law. He ended up sleeping. I mean, he drank a lot of l'chaim, so he ended up under the table, literally. Out. And I wasn't there, right? But the word is that Rav Mendel's father said, "Oh, a good Chassidish bacher," and he was very excited that this was. So don't tell any future chassonim to do that today, but that's what Rav Mendel did. So it's just a treat to be in the Rebbe's shchuna. It really is. To just hang out in 770. It's just something that on a certain level you can take it for granted, but don't take it for granted because it's something that was taken away from a lot of us for a while. I know that 770 closed for a few months. That it was really quite difficult for everybody here in the neighborhood. That's certainly true. But I did hear people say, unfortunately, it wasn't what we were hoping it was going to be. There's some person said, okay, my son, actually, your son's teacher said, well, 770 is closed. Maybe that means that none of us should walk into 770 again until the Rebbe is there with us. Be'enei basar b'guf gashmi, we can see the Rebbe like we always did. But I don't forgive anybody I mean, I walked in myself. I don't forgive anybody walking into 770. At least, if at least we have that, that's what we have. But we want more, and we don't want to stay in this golus. And I think it's Gimel. It's Daled Tamuz. It's already almost Hey Tamuz. Beseder Daled Tamuz. Actually, today is the yahrzeit of Mendel. Mendel Futterfaus passed away Daled Tamuz Tafshin Nun Hey. And in London. So today was Mendel's yahrzeit. But Gimel Tamuz, I mean, what are we supposed to do on Gimel Tamuz? Gimel Tamuz, I think, Baruch Hashem, is no longer Tisha B'Av. There was a time when it was Tisha B'Av for people. Not everybody, but some people. And I think no one relates to Gimel Tamuz as Tisha B'Av anymore. I don't think that's because people don't feel something on Gimel Tamuz. I think that's because people have come to the realization, all of us, that for whatever reason, Gimel Tamuz is part of a process, and that process, even though we don't understand exactly why the process has to be the way it is, but that is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And the process is a certain state of concealment before the ultimate revelation of Mashiach, and that's the situation we're in now. And our job is to take the energy from that day and use it to to challenge ourselves and bring about in ourselves a closer, more powerful connection to the Rebbe, and ask ourselves very, very seriously, what can I do more? I don't know whether that's proper English, but it's okay. What more can I do? I mean, that's the proper English, I know, but what can I do that is more involved in such that I'm more involved in bringing Mashiach? Now, that doesn't have to be something quantitative. It can be qualitative. I'm doing the same thing, just more qualitatively. Meaning I don't necessarily have to say more Tehillim. I don't have to say another chapter, but maybe I should say those Tehillim I say with a little more quality. I don't necessarily have to go on more mitzvahim. Maybe I can just add in the quality of that, of the mitzvahim that I do. Or it can be quantitative, but I'm taking upon myself to, adding in a Seder and learning or mitzvahim or whatever it happens to be. Remember once in the Sem talking about the fact, and it's a very reasonable thing to do, and it's something that we can all do. Right? Make achlota to take 3 to 5 minutes of your week. Once a week, make a phone call to someone that you don't usually talk to and tell them that you were thinking of them, you love them, and you hope they're okay. If you got that phone call, how would you feel? Wow, that was so nice. That would make your day. Okay, so make a Jew's day once a week. Look in the, the number of contacts in here is a little obscene, right? I mean, when they, you're looking for someone, so like it's just you don't even know who these people are. I mean, they have these names. I mean, who are these people, right? Okay, so there's enough people in here. So find some roommate from Sam that you haven't talked to for 6 months or 6 years, and call them up and say, "How are you? Just thinking of you." You don't want to get stuck in a 20-minute conversation, which is understandable. Don't send them one of those notes, right? Voice notes, which are very useful if you don't want to get stuck in a 20-minute conversation. I understand that, but you don't want to do that. You want to talk to them. So say, I have 5 minutes. I'm going into a meeting, but I just really, really wanted to say hello once a week. You can't find 50 people in the next year, right? Then you could call the same people again because you haven't talked to them for a year, unless they called you in the middle and said, "How you doing?" Right? It's one of the simplest hachlotas to do in the world. All you did was make another Jew feel good. What gives the Rebbe more nachas than making another Jew feel good? It's not a big thing. It's not like deep and sophisticated and spiritual. It's just simple act of kindness, right? Which is what the Rebbe wants from us. If there's more, he wants us to do a lot, but simple acts of kindness are also part of it. And we can do it to people. It doesn't have to be painful. I mean, you really do like this person, and it would be very nice to talk to them. I mean, you might have half an hour and you're more than interested in talking for half an hour, but they also might not have half an hour. So take that into account also. And say, you know what, I have 5 minutes, how you doing? And if they want to follow up and call you back later and you talk for half an hour, great, beautiful. But once a week can make another Jew happy. It can't be that won't help Mashiach come. Can't be, right? And we mamish. Last night I told the story that 2 years ago, Sholem Shapiro called me up and said, "Will you speak?" It's 2 or 3. Someone today said it was 2. I don't know. I thought it was 3, but it doesn't matter. It definitely wasn't 1 because I wasn't around. So he called me up and said, the Farbrengen, the main Farbrengen in 770, will you speak in English at the main Farbrengen in 770? So Sholem, what does that mean? You mean the part of the Farbrengen where someone's speaking in the microphone and no one's listening, that part? He said, yeah. He said, I can do that. I have no problem speaking. I mean, if no one's listening, why be nervous, right? I mean, there's nothing to be nervous about if no one's listening to anything you're saying. It's a bunch of Lubavitchers talking on the floor. Every now and then, the manchel will go, Chevra, and he'll say in Yiddish. And half the people, he's saying in Yiddish because he's a Lubavitcher and he has to speak Yiddish because he's speaking in 770. Now, of course, 3/4 of the people making noise on the floor are Israeli Bachrim who don't speak Yiddish, but that doesn't matter. I mean, we're not interested in that. We just have to make the public announcement that you should be quiet. So, everybody over 50 stops talking, but no one else. So last night I had the pleasure of speaking. I'm actually, it is a pleasure. It's a special, something special to speak in the Rebbe Shul. It really is. It's not. And there was more. They were making a lot more noise than me. So Baruch Hashem is exactly the same. It doesn't go to your head because no one's listening. So it's okay. But just mentioned the story that I heard from Rabbi. It's not really a story. A mushal. It is whatever it is. You can decide what it is. Say that. You decide, and then you can write it down later and send it on a WhatsApp what it was, and then I'll know next time. Is a Yid. It's probably a story some of you have heard. A Yid who was in a shir of Chassidus by the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe is teaching the Inyan of Einoid Milvadeh. Now, the Alter Rebbe teaching Einoid Milvadeh, from Moshe Rabbeinu saying it to Am Yisrael in Devarim in the year 2488, in the month of Shvat or the beginning of the month of Adar. I'm not sure exactly, when exactly did Moshe Rabbeinu say Einoid Milvadeh. So it's in Devarim, so that's somewhere from Rosh Chodesh Shvat to Zayin Adar in the year 2488. Moshe Rabbeinu said those words, Einoid Milvadeh, which are rather famous words. It's even become a bumper sticker, right? Or even better is the people who put it in the window in the back of their car, with the individual letters, Ein Oid Milvadoi. Okay. So from the time Moshe Rabbeinu said it in the year 2488 until the Alter Rebbe was teaching it in Liadi, so until then, no one ever understood that idea like it was being taught by the Alter Rebbe in that group. Okay. That doesn't mean people didn't understand it. I mean, there were great Gedolim, tzaddikim who understood it, but your average person wasn't being taught by anybody what Einoid Milvadeh means. Rabbi Akiva wasn't teaching too many people what Einoid Milvadeh means. At least not that we see. Maybe privately, but nothing written that we have. And the Alter Rebbe was teaching Einoid Milvadeh in the Al-Pi Chassidus in a way that explains it in the deepest way imaginable. This chassid walked out of that shir, Ein Oid Milvadeh. Right? That does really mean something. Ein Oid Milvadeh. Fresca doesn't really exist. Ein Oid Milvadeh. I don't really exist. The chair I'm on doesn't really exist. But Baruch Hashem, hopefully I go out of existence before the chair, else it could be, somewhat. If the chair goes out of existence before me, that would be problematic. But it's usually together. Once the Rebbe Farbrengen was Yud Shvat HaGodel, and a lot of people came in from Eretz Yisrael for Yud Shvat Tafshin Lamed, and a lot of people came in from Eretz Yisrael, and the Rebbe made a special Farbrengen for the guests from Eretz Yisrael on, I believe it was a Sunday afternoon, and that there should be a Farbrengen before they go back to Eretz Yisrael. And the Rebbe was Farbrengen. Now, everybody had to get. There was no Newark in those days. Everybody was leaving from Kennedy. So they all had to get their flights. Now, flights to Europe, through Europe, or the straight flights leave 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, the later flights, 11 o'clock. So the Rebbe's Farbrengen, people started looking at their watches because they didn't want to leave the Farbrengen, but they also didn't want to miss their flight. So people were sort of, sitting, listening to Rebbe Farbrengen, going like this. So the Rebbe noticed what was going on, and the Rebbe said, I don't understand. Why are you all worried about missing your flights? You're looking at your watch. You're worried about missing the plane? And then the Rebbe explained the Inyan of Humachadish B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereishis, that that the Eibishter renews creation at every moment, which means, Al-Pi Chassidus, that creation goes from a state of yesh to ayin to yesh to ayin to yesh to ayin to yesh to ayin every macrosecond. So the world is coming into existence and going out of existence, and coming into existence and going out of existence at every smallest moment imaginable. Now, obviously, we don't notice those times that we go out of existence, right? What's a mushal? Well, if you've ever seen 35 millimeter film, right? There's an image and then a little line of celluloid material, plastic, then another image, and then another line, and those images pass. I mean, digital works the same way. I just don't know how it works, but it's the same thing. There's image, 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 image. What's in between each image that you're looking at? A non-image, a non-state of being, right? Well, that's what allows for change. How do I get from one state to another state? A non-state in between that allows state one to turn into state two. Reality one will now become reality 2, 3, 4, 5. What's in between them? State of non-reality, so to speak. That's the ayin in between each state of yesh. The Rabbi explained this for a few minutes. And the Rabbi said, I don't understand why you people are all worried about missing your plane. The plane you're going to get on doesn't even exist yet. It hasn't come into existence. So why are you worried about missing it? It doesn't exist. When does the plane that you get on come into existence? As you put your foot in the plane just came into existence. Now, so did you. Now, Baruch Hashem, when you're 35,000 feet in the air in that plane, you and the plane are going in and out of existence together. So don't worry about it. It's not that the plane is going to disappear and you're going to find yourself, even if you're sitting in business, it's not going to help very much if the plane goes out of, you'll have your comfy chair, but boy, I really fell asleep on that plane. That was it. No, but that's how the world works. That's how the world works. And that's Ein Od Milvado. It's all him, constantly. And this chassid was just Ein Od Milvado. It's nothing but him. And he was really cooking in this. He was really thinking about it. He was walking along. Ein Od Milvado. Wow. He was so involved in it, he didn't notice that there was a low-hanging branch from a tree on the path he was walking on. And he walked right into the branch. His feet went out from under him and he landed on the ground with a thud. His head really, really, really hurt. And he had one, you run into a tree, you get that little scratch with the little pieces of blood, right? Little, like bleed, but a little scratch. So he goes like this, he sees a little blood. And his head really hurts. Why does his head hurt? Because of the branch. But Ein Od Milvado. There's no head, there's no branch. So how can my head hurt? What did I hit? I hit Ein Od Milvado. And my head is Ein Od Milvado. So I mean, I don't know, he's just sitting there. So he sat, thought about it. 20 minutes he sat on the ground being misbeinen in this Indian. His head was banging from the beating it just took from this branch. How? Ein Od Milvado. Whoa, does my head hurt? So he came to the conclusion, I've got it. Ein Od Milvado. Except that branch in my head. Those are the only two things that exist. That story describes our reality all the time. Every single one of us knows Ein Od Milvado. And every single one of us feels our head and knows there's a branch. And the branch gets in the way and makes our head hurt. Or whatever it happens to be. So how do we navigate that? And in terms of the fact that we all know that we're the Eibishter sent us into Elam Hazeh to bring Mashiach. That's why you can call it anything you want, right? You can call it Dir B'Tachtonim, you can call it the Gula Mitis Vashlema. You can whatever you want. Gilu Elokus in Vata Tetzavos, the Rebbe says that what is the true Ratzon of a Yid? Gilu Elokus. What does Gilu Elokus mean? Mashiach. That's what it means. Mashiach by another name. Whatever it happens to be. It means that the Eibishter created the world so that you and I, and we're the generation that's going to do it, and it's very, very exciting. We're going to bring Mashiach. But so this was all about everything that ever happened in the whole history of the world is all ultimately about some generation actually figuring out how to bring Mashiach. Not in some conceptual way. Not Ein Od Milvado except my head in that tree. But no, Ein Od Milvado. Where does my head and the tree fit in there? That's really a good question because my head and that tree they're also part of Ein Od Milvado. It's also just him. Wait, I'm him? No, I'm not exactly him. Right? I mean, I'm not the Eibishter. Seder, but my existence is simply an expression of his existence, and the existence of that tree is simply an expression of his existence. We're not separate from Ein Milvadeh. We're all part of Ein Milvadeh. There's nothing other than him? Okay, right. Meaning even those things that are out there that appear to be other than him aren't other than him. What's one of those things? And this is really hard for us. It really is hard for us. I'm not saying it's not a drasha. It's true. It's life. I mean, gullus is one of those things that somehow is part of Ein Milvadeh. It's like hitting your head against a tree, and it hurts. It scratches. Without no gullus, I'd be fine. You talk to people about bringing Mashiach. Well, if the Eibusher would just send Mashiach, I'd get from it. I could bring Mashiach. I have no problem bringing Mashiach once Mashiach is here. It's bringing Mashiach from Golis. That's my problem. Well, where else exactly are we going to bring Mashiach from? Right? What are we going to transform into Geula? Geula? Then it's done. That's not a big deal. The idea is to transform Geula into Geula by finding the Aleph, being Mesif, the Aleph in Geula, so it transforms into Geula, which is finding Elokus in Geula. What does that mean? That means finding Elokus in our lives. Living Elokus, breathing.
I feel like it's so much easier to talk to people about, like when you're on the site, it's so much easier to talk to people about Mashiach when you feel like Mashiach's right here. And then I'm like, oh, yes, that. But like if you're talking to them about like Mashiach, and like it's like some distinct concept that like, what do you say? And for me, sometimes it's a little embarrassing.
Well,
Just like telling them like your reality doesn't really exist, like there's a better reality. I guess you're not saying it doesn't exist, it's just kind of like
what doesn't exist? What do you mean?
It's like telling people like this isn't where it's at, like there's a better, like what is it? Like,
Everybody knows this isn't where it's at. But if there's one thing, right? Yeah, I mean,
but for me, it's like I don't know, maybe it's something that it's like hard to like tell people like an alternate reality. That's how I feel.
I don't know, but I think I hear what you're saying, but I think people are so open to that these days. I mean, they're trying to create an alternate reality, right? They're trying to take the courthouse and turn it into a pile of ashes. I mean, that's creating an alternate reality. Let's burn down everything, right? I mean, one thing as a spectator from the outside watching modern day America, one thing is striking. People are just so angry. What are they so angry about, these people? They're just so angry. Democrats are just angry at everybody. What are you angry about? So what's the positive of that? There's an amazing sikha the Rebbe asks, right as all of the stories begin in Bamidbar, the stories that aren't always the best stories, right? And the first story is the Misainanim, the ones who complain, right? And the Rebbe asks, what? And when do we read it? Parshas Naseh, right after Shavuos, sometimes before, but usually right after. What are all these complaints? The Rebbe says an amazing thing. In general, I mean, if you're taking a long sikha and turning it into something very short, but we're supposed to do that. The Rebbe says, when a Yid complains about reality, what are they really complaining about? Their nefesh elokis isn't satisfied with what's going on, and their nefesh elokis isn't satisfied with the level of elokus being revealed in the world, and so they're complaining. Now, their complaint might come through the nefesh habahamis and end up being just kvetchit. Okay, what's the source of it? The source of it is in a Yid, not in the people burning down Portland, but in a Yid. It's coming from a place of a lack of satisfaction with reality as it is. Oh, okay. So where it's coming from in these people, I don't know, but at least we can take all of that incredibly negative energy and try to transform it into something positive. That at least what these people want is a new world. The new world they want is really, it's called Venezuela. It's not new. I mean, right? All you want is Venezuela. So why are you doing this, right? You want to call it Russia. You call it whatever. It doesn't matter. Cuba. You want to create just disaster. Okay, but that's not new. That's old. That's old news. Why are you living old news? What's the new news? Mashiach is the new news. That's the real news. That's what's really happening. All right? You want to break down an order? Fine. But don't replace it with something that's broken lechatchila. Connect to what's real, what's not broken. And what people are definitely looking for something alternative, which is positive. I mean, the way they're going about it is absolutely disastrous. But they're looking for something good. And even I mean, the American politics, I mean, I'm just obviously it's nothing's black and white, but the Republican who likes things the way they are, so to speak. The things that they talk about are all the good things that there are. They know there's bad stuff, but they say, wait a minute, why are you only talking about the bad stuff? Why don't you talk about the good stuff? Because there is good stuff. And all this good stuff they mention is stuff that'll be around when Mashiach comes. Family, God, right? That's what they're pushing. Wait a minute, you guys forgot what this place is all about. This place is all about an interesting experiment and giving people the ability to experience goodness. And this other side is saying, but it's all bad. So you can take the positive from half of it and say, yeah, beautiful. Find the goodness. And the negative of these people, they're so negative, it's beyond belief. I mean, they're just so miserable. Okay, well, okay, good. You're miserable about the fact that the world isn't the way it should be. You're right. Let's take that energy and turn it into something positive and make it a better place. Don't turn it into Venezuela. We have one of those. One is enough. But there's something positive can come out of this. Okay. Who knows? Who knows what the Abish's got in store for us? I mean, we know what he's got in store for us. Exactly when, we're not sure. We hope it's going to be taken from Miyad. But all this craziness, I mean, it's definitely changing reality. Okay, good. Reality has to change. We don't want it to change in a negative way. We want it to change in a positive way. And I think people are open to that. I remember once talking to someone who was saying that you can't talk about Mashiach with Balei Tshuva, it'll turn them off. So I just found, now this was someone who grew up from, obviously, because no Balei Tshuva would say that. Why? You're going to tell me Mashiach is weirder than tefillin? Tefillin is weird. That's really funky. Hey man, you Jewish? Yeah, come. Let's strap black leather boxes and black leather straps on you. You got any studs, man? Can I put a stud in my nose when I do with the? No studs. Only leather. Only leather. Let's go. Tefillin is very bizarre if you didn't grow up with it. Mashiach, better world, utopia. I mean, everybody wants that. So I don't think that's an issue. I think most people will find that a very beautiful thing. Right? Tefillin. I mean, I understand that your mitzvah is not tefillin, right? Candles, okay. In all fairness, you guys have it pretty easy, right? You want to light some candles? Oh, candles! Wow. You got any that have a fragrance? Oh yeah, here, sweetie, take the look. These are purple. Oh, you should get some. Just I don't know, carry some perfume and spray it on the thing. Oh wow, thank you so much. So wait, light it at 6:12 on Friday afternoon. Wow, why? It's a special cosmic moment. Wow, that's so cool. And they'll, why, that's a little easier to sell than black leather boxes with leather straps. And you have to do it right now in the street, right? Okay, but say it's not always easier to be a man. I mean, I know, my wife, whenever I have to walk out the door Friday night to go to those wonderful events called the Shalom Zachar, which are such wonderful events, such a wonderful thing. It's just what every Jewish man wants to do. Friday evening after a hard week is after dinner, getting the kids to sleep. I mean, I don't go to very many anymore because all my friends are old and decrepit like me, and so we're not making Shalom Zachars. But when we were young and not decrepit, and we had our own children at home, and so we were more exhausted. So what's more fun? What would you rather do than leave your house and schlep in the rain to some guy's house and sit down and, pretend that you want to be there? I mean, it might be a friend and you're really happy. You are happy for the person, but in all fairness, it's Lil Shabbos. You don't want to leave your house. You're home finally. You just want to stay there, right? Every time I used to go out, my wife always I'd say Good Shabbos. She'd say, Boruch Shaloya Sani Gever. And she'd walk upstairs and go to sleep. Every day, Baruch Shaloya Sani Gever, every time. And I just smile. That's my sweetie. And that's the way it goes. So we're busy with our Baruch every day. Shaloya Sani Isha. Yeah. It's not always so easy. It's not always so easy. So we have all sorts of, Mashiach. But I don't know, Mitzrayim is one thing. Mitzrayim is one thing, but we also, the first person that we have to do a lot of Mitzrayim with is the person whose teeth we brush every day. That person, we have a lot of responsibility for that person's well-being and that person's involvement in the general well-being of the world. And that's really, interesting enough, the only person I have any control whatsoever over. The person I refer to as me. Right? Meaning I have a certain amount of control over my children, but anybody who's a parent realizes that that's only because they haven't figured it out yet. Right? And if they do figure it out, then we're really in trouble. There's very little we can do. And certainly don't have control over our spouse. We don't have control over the people around us. Why? Well, we're not supposed to have control over these people. These people are individuals who are supposed to have control over themselves. They're living their life. And one thing as young women who are starting, wherever you're holding in that wonderful process of being a parent, none of you are so far along, even though some of you in the room have started that, okay. As your kids grow older, don't try to control them. Let them be people. Let them make mistakes. Right? Now, if the mistake is chas v'shalom dangerous, so of course you do whatever you have to do. But most mistakes are not dangerous. They're just mistakes that people learn from. Right? So your kids don't have to do everything you want them to do. I mean, al pi halacha, I understand they do if you tell them. But you don't have to tell them. Right? Even with little kids. What do they tell parents with little kids? Is your 8-year-old the oldest? Yeah. Okay, so pick your battles, right? Don't battle the kid about everything. Kid does something wrong in the living room. He doesn't need you telling him every single time that he did something wrong, right? I mean, would you like that? Every single time you do something wrong, someone shows up and says, that's not good. You're better than that. Is there a safe space around here that I can find? No one's going to tell me that if I make a mistake. Is there such a place? Big Mother is watching you. It used to be Big Brother. Now it's Big Mother, right? It's just, pick your battles. You don't have to be there for everything. Okay, the kid just spilled something you didn't even notice. Just go to your room. See what happens over the next 10 minutes. You know what he's going to do? He's going to make a bigger mess trying to clean up the mess. But, let him clean up the mess and then pretend you don't even know that he spilled it. And it's okay. Nothing's going to happen. It's okay. When they get older, let them make their own decisions. It's so frightening in my notes. So often, 22, 23, 24-year-old Bachrim, they'll ask them, what are your plans next year? Well, I want to do this, but my parents want me to do this. Now, I'm supposed to be the religious Jew who's into kibbud av v'em and all that, right? But excuse me, why what have your parents got to do with your decisions? You're 23 years old. You're an adult. Make a decision. Then tell your parents, I think this is what I want to do next year. What do you think? Good idea? But you're doing it. Why? Because you're 23 years old and you're old enough to make your own decisions. And make them. And what's the problem? I don't think the 23-year-old kid is the problem. I think the parent of the 23-year-old kid is the problem. And the parent won't let the 23-year-old kid make a decision. So then the 23-year-old kid doesn't think he can. Of course he can. If he can't, so then really the parent should stay out of it, so he'll learn how to. Right? So many parents getting involved in things that isn't their business. Meaning, I understand it's their child, and I understand sometimes children make choices that we don't want them to make, but they're allowed to make them. They're an adult. They're an individual separate from you, and they're an adult, and they can make those choices. And it's very important as a parent to let them make those choices. You ever notice that's how God runs the world? He lets us make our own choices. He doesn't stop us before we make a mistake and go, no, don't do that. Whoa. Right? Now, we'd be really good that way. We'd all be marshmallows. We'd have no personality, no reality. That's exactly the world God didn't create, right? There was a world like that. It's called Gan Eden. It lasted a few hours, and the Eibishter, on the sixth day of creation, not part of the history of the world, part of the creation of the world, destroyed that world. Right? The sixth day of creation is the destruction of Gan Eden, because that's not the world the Eibishter wants around. He wants a world where you and I, milamata, learn, teach ourselves, teach others, figure it out, make mistakes, and ultimately come to the realization of Ein Od Milvado and act the way we're supposed to act and get things together and bring Mashiach. Oh, good catch. That's what the Eibishter wants. You ever notice how our Rebbe does it? Go open a Chabad house. How? What are you me for? Go open a Chabad house. Rabbi told anybody how? No. Just said, go open a Chabad house. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. Sometimes, it's interesting because I hate to pull rank, in terms of age, but I just remember this, and it's not something that would happen today. There would be certain things happening in Lubavitch that were clearly not positive. People fighting and not getting along. It's not like this is new. Lubavitch has been a bunch of Russians banging into each other for a very long time. So people always wonder, especially people outside of Lubavitch, why doesn't the Rebbe just tell them to stop? Never would. Rebbe never did. Now, that doesn't mean the Rebbe didn't express displeasure sometimes. It's things people did. That the Rebbe definitely, or the opposite. But most of the time, you figure it out. Go figure it out. I'm telling you what the truth is. This is truth. This is what's real. This is Ein Od Milvado. Now go figure it out. In your own life, your own way.
Why is that?
But that's because that's Selam Hazeh, that's a Veda. That's it's interesting. There's an amazing sikha. Two sikhs from Chav Ches Sivan, which I think we're still allowed to talk about, aren't we? After Gimel Tamuz, you're still allowed to talk about Chav Ches Sivan, or is it you're not allowed to because now you're living in the past or something? But Chav Ches Sivan. So there are two. Chav Ches Sivan, I didn't really, I never really understood the whole, how did Chav Ches Sivan start, so to speak? We know that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America in Chav Ches Sivan Tavshin Yudalef, 1941. But when did the Chassidim figure that out? Now, obviously there were Chassidim there who knew that happened, but that was a very, very small group of people. There were very few people around them. I have a neighbor in Har Nof who grew up in this neighborhood, used to have an insurance agent. I don't think it's not there anymore. Used to have an insurance agency on Kingston Avenue called oh man, I'm blanking. Anyway, there was an insurance agency, and he ran it, and then his son ran it until 10 years ago. It was there. So he remembers. He grew up in the neighborhood. When the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, Tes Adar Tavshin, 1940. he remembers his father. They weren't Lubavitchers. They lived in Crown Heights, but they weren't Lubavitchers. There were no Lubavitchers in Crown Heights in 1940. Friedrich Rebbe wasn't here yet. All right, so his father took him to the docks to welcome. He said, a big tzaddik, he just got out of Europe and he's coming. And he didn't say the Friedrich Rebbe because the Friedrich Rebbe wasn't the Friedrich Rebbe, right? He was the Rebbe. It's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and we're going to go to the docks. So he remembers going to the docks. Solomon's insurance. Lenny Solomon. So Lenny told me, Eliezer is really. So he said that he remembers his father getting phone calls to be mashlim a minyan for the Friedrich Rebbe. Right? There wasn't a minyan. They needed a tent for the Friedrich Rebbe's minyan. So his father would get a phone call, and his father would go to 770 and go upstairs to the Friedrich Rebbe's room and be mashlim the minyan. There was no one around at the beginning. No one. I mean, how could there be anybody around? The Rebbe just got here. Friedrich Rebbe. So when the Rebbe came a year later, there was still very few people around. So the few people who were around knew, I think Fogelman wrote a Yoman that's like, people published it later, but no one knew. How did people find out that there's this reality called Chav Ches Sivan and that the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America on Chav Ches Sivan Tavshin Aleph? In Tavshin Mem Daled, 1984, they published some igros of the Friedrich Rebbe, and in one of the igros, the Friedrich Rebbe writes, it was stated Chav Ches Sivan that today my daughter and son-in-law made it safely to America from Europe. So the Chassidim went, oh, the Rebbe came Chav Ches Sivan. So of course, Bachrim being Bachrim, started making a shturim about Chav Ches Sivan. So that year there was nothing. In Mem Vav, they wanted to make a big shturim. They put up posters, and the Rebbe actually did say a Sichan Chav Ches Sivan, but the Rebbe talked more about Tes Adar, Friedrich Rebbe come. Didn't mention him come. He didn't talk about Chav Ches Sivan itself. Didn't even mention Chav Ches Sivan, but there was a Sicha. But it's interesting when it's so the Rebbe, when the Bochum said they wanted to make a shturim about Chav Ches Sivan because the Rebbe came from Europe, the Rebbe said, Ishu Beisai. Meaning the man and his wife, not just the Ish, the man and his wife, we both came. Right? Ishu Beisai, Bochum, what do they know from such a thing? Right? So the Rebbe was teaching them, hello, I didn't come alone. And Ishu Beisa, the Rebbe said. The first time the Rebbe Farbrengen the Mamish on Chav Ches Sivan and actually talks about Chav Ches Sivan was Tavshin Mem Tes. It fell out on Shabbos. And there's a Sicha all about Chav Ches Sivan. And it was Parsha Shlach, and the Rebbe talks about the Indian of Ladaitcha. This was all an answer to your question. I know it took a while, but that's why a Farbrengen doesn't have a title. Because everything takes a while in Farbrengen. The Rebbe explains the meaning of Ladaitcha. Shlach lecha, right? You send. What's lecha? So Rashi says Ladaitcha. In accordance with your will. Ani eni mitzav lecha. I'm not commanding you. If you want, you can send. That's what the Yebusha says to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rebbe explains the meaning of Ladaitcha. So there's two different levels of a person's behavior. There's behavior that is a function of a tzivui, a command from above. And there's a whole new level in Aveda which is revealed in Shlach, and that's Ladaitcha, that Mila Mata, from the Jew, him or herself, mitzad their own appreciation of the Eibishter's will, that they become sensitive to what God wants, even though he doesn't tell them, and that's Ladaitcha. And that whole new Aveda came into being with the whole story of the Merag. And it's a very positive thing, the Rebbe says. There were certain negative hashlachot from what happened with the Meraglim. That's certainly true. But interesting enough, what was the Meraglim all about? Going into Eretz Yisrael and conquering Eretz Yisrael. Where does that come from? Ladaitcha. That's all Ladaitcha. What did the Rebbe tell us? I've done what I can do. Now it's up to you, right? Bring Mashiach. We didn't believe the Rebbe. Thought the Rebbe was going to do it. I mean, he's doing it, right? But he wants us to. I mean, we're the ones who have to do it. We have to bring Mashiach. Can we bring Mashiach without seeing the Rebbe? Well, evidently, because that's where we are. Did we want this to happen? Well, if anybody did, they're not a healthy person. But this is what happened. We're in a situation where we don't see the Rebbe with our physical eyes. Can we bring Mashiach without seeing the Rebbe with our physical eyes? Can we be a real chassid without seeing the Rebbe with our physical eyes? Can we be a real chassid without ever having seen the Rebbe with our physical eyes? Well, if you say no to that question, then you are disagreeing with the Kadosh Baruch Hu's running of the world. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu obviously thinks that you can, because that's the situation almost everybody in this room is in. And to be perfectly honest, the fact that obviously it's very nice to have seen the Rebbe, but it's been a very long time for everybody. So obviously you and I can do what it is that we have to do, even though we don't see the Rebbe walk into 770, daven with us, Farbrengen with us, if we absolutely needed that. There's parts of us that we feel that we need that, and that's a good part of us. I understand that. But bottom line, if we absolutely needed that in order to do what it is we were sent to Elam Hazeh to do, then that would be the experience we all have. That is not the experience we have right now. Therefore, by definition, we do not need that. And that's the Rebbe's explanation relative to another issue, but the Rebbe's explanation of how God runs the world. That everything that is necessary for a person to fulfill their shlichus exists in the world. And if something doesn't exist in the world, that means that's a sign that it's not necessary to fulfill the shlichus. Rabbi said that to a rabbi regarding a question, well, the answer to the question, Holocaust, why? This is someone who'd gone through the Shoah, and it was from, still from, it was a Rav in Brooklyn, but he certainly didn't understand why he had to see Satan, the Muchash. He just didn't understand that. Why did I have to go through that Gehenna, and why did all those Yidden go through the Gehenna, and most of the Yidden that he knew didn't make it through like he did? And he asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe explains, a long letter explains how everything God created in the world is for a purpose. That purpose is dir b'tachteinim, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And everything necessary in the world to bring about that purpose exists in the world. And then the Rebbe says at the end of the letter, the answer to your question does not exist in the world. Therefore, it's not necessary to bring Mashiach.
The Rabbi told us to do that for Mashiach, so we don't see Mashiach after.
Well, but I don't need Mashiach to bring Mashiach. That's what we're talking. We're talking about bringing Mashiach. I can't. If Mashiach shows up, then the Aveda bringing Mashiach is over. We did it. We're finished. Right now, you and I have an Aveda to do. We have to bring Mashiach. We are absolutely, completely, and totally responsible for that reality. Don't blame anybody else. It's not the people who disagree with you who are not bringing Mashiach. The only person that I know who can bring Mashiach is me. And the only person you know who can bring Mashiach is you, because you have control over your life and you can use your life to bring Mashiach. Does that mean that there are other people? Of course, there's all sorts of people doing that. Are they doing a better job than me? Of course, they're doing a better job than me. But the only person I know who I have control over, who can mamish bring Mashiach, is me, because that's the only person whose life I live. I only live one person's life, Baruch Hashem. I mean, we talk about, there are parents who like to live all their children's lives. Get a life, one. Live your own. Your children are not little nachas machines that exist to give you nachas. They are individual human beings that have their own aveda.
How do you stay away from controlling your kids?
If you have such a taiva, go talk to a friend and figure out how not to act on it. Right? I mean, it's a taiva like anything else. Control is a big taiva, right?
So many of these guys in my parents like that.
Because I think their parents are incredibly insecure about parenting and insecure about themselves. And so they express, I see, but I think they express that. That's a simple answer, but I do think that's the, sort of the nekuda ikaris in the whole thing. Is that their parents don't really feel confident in their own ability to be a parent. And so I remember once asking some students in the University of Illinois campus at the end of a talk about how we all have our own self-worth and we don't I mean, maybe we'll go there later, but we're not going there right now. But just the story that it was at the end of a talk about the fact that you aren't worth something because you accomplish things. You're worth something because God created you. Now go accomplish things. And that's how the Rebbe looks at us, and that's how the Rebbe looks at the world, and that's how God looks at the world. So we're worth something because God created us. A person doesn't have to do something to be worth something. So we're talking about the fact that so often in the Western world, a person is judged by their accomplishments. So if they accomplish more, they're worth more. And if they accomplish less, they're worth less until they could be worthless. And that's not good. So then it happened to be the shaliach told me it's exam time. So you're going to have to finish pretty early because the kids are pretty stressed. So I don't know what got into me, but anyway. So I asked them, you guys are having exams tomorrow, huh? Yeah. Can I ask you a question? So we were having a good time by this time. So they was, okay, yeah, fine. Okay. Do you think you're worth more? Are you going to think that you're worth more if you get an A on the exam tomorrow as opposed to a B? So most of them said, yeah. I said, do you think that's true now? They said, no, probably not, but yeah, I will. Okay, good, fine. So then I said, can I ask another question? Yeah. Do you think your parents are going to think that you're worth more if you get an A than if you get a B? It was silent like this for a while. Like, whoa. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. So then I said, can I ask a third question? By this time they were nervous. Can I ask a third question? They burst out laughing, but it was nervous laughter. Do you think your parents are going to think more about themselves if you get an A as opposed to a B? And they all said, yep. Now you tell that 19-year-old kid with that pressure that the mark he gets on that exam is his self-worth, his parents' view of him, and his parents' view of themselves. Because if their kid got a B, they're failures. Now, go be a happy, healthy, well-adjusted human being. You're wondering why that kid's drunk and on drugs all day? Which he is. Of course he is. Who could live with that pressure? Who could live under such pressure? Everything that I'm doing is not only about me, it's about my parents and my grandparents. Yeah, I mean, who knows? It could be generations. His aunts and uncles could be involved in this. They're all sitting at home, watching, waiting. What did Jim get on his exam? Mary, did Jim call yet? Poor Jim. Of course, Jim didn't call yet. He passed out. That really is what they're really living with that, these poor kids. That's very heavy. So now if those parents had more self-confidence in their own self, so then they wouldn't need their child to be successful in order to feel like they're a successful human being. Right? But they don't really think that they're very successful. So maybe I'll leave some clandestine success through my child. And they put this unbelievable pressure on their child. My goodness gracious, he's a 19-year-old. You let him live. And if he gets a B on his math exam, what's going to happen? Big deal. Is he happy? Is he well adjusted? Does he treat people properly? That's what matters, right? You got a B or an A in math, who cares? Even got a C. And we can do it to ourselves. We can do it to ourselves. And the Rebbe comes and tells us that's not what life's about. And then each and every one of us can accomplish amazing things, but we're not worth something because we accomplish. What does the Rebbe say to us? You are so amazing, so now go accomplish. There's no end to what you can do. The Rebbe tells us over and over and over again. And most of the people in this room, in all fairness, I would say basically all of you, in all fairness, I would say that too. You're at a point in life, you're at such an amazing place in life. There's almost nothing you can't do. Okay, but say there's some kids and there's a certain amount of, that's definitely limiting. And okay, say that, but basically, there's so much that you can accomplish. Not to be worth something. There's so much you can accomplish because you're worth so much. Because the Rebbe believes you. And why does the Rebbe believe in you? Because the Rebbe knows who we really are and we're created by the Eibishter. And if we're created by the Eibishter, then we must be worth something. Because there was an old Lubavitch poster, God don't make junk. God don't make junk. That means, the kid who's not so good at things, give him his respect. Good, but how about ourselves? God don't make junk. I'm not junk. Can't be junk. God doesn't make junk. So therefore I must be worth something. You are. Good. Now, go, do, live, make it happen. There's no end to what we can make happen. And in all fairness, there's times in life when we have more opportunity and times in life when we have less opportunity. Not just because in all fairness, we probably spent a long time dealing with those opportunities. So there's less avenues open. It's not that no one's retiring, but I was asked to take over a particular school by someone that was, needed to be taken over. I don't think I was wrong. He said, you need someone 35 years old. You don't need someone my age. You need someone 35 years old who can take this as the energy of a 35-year-old and who, won't sleep for the next 10 years and make this thing happen. You don't need someone who's, energy level is diminishing, not increasing. Right? The last 4 days in Crown Heights, I tried to keep up with Bochum. I didn't try to keep up with Bochum. I just happened to be doing the same thing Bochum were doing, which is what everybody was doing. We're sitting Farbrengen every night until 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Right. Okay. So last night I left the Farbrengen at 4:30 because I'm a lowlife and a thief, and and my son was, just warming up. He gives me a big kiss. Goodbye. See you tomorrow. Fine. So I saw him this morning. I said, until when were you here? So he said, well, I didn't leave. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, about 7 o'clock we were Farbrengen and I fell asleep. I never did this. He said, Abba, I never did this. I fell asleep with my head on my chin and I woke up at 10 o'clock. Woke up in 770 at 10 o'clock, sitting in the same place. Whereas now all of a sudden it's full of people in thousand fill and the Rebbe's minyan is about to begin. He probably woke up at 5 to 10 because there's a song that starts at 5 to 10. It probably woke him up, right? So then he said, well, I got up and I went to my room and I got stuff for the mikveh. I went to the mikveh. I didn't get back. So that, Now the night before, I know he was up until 6. So how do you do that? When you're 20, that's okay. At a certain age, you can't do that anymore. You can do it once, twice, but just night after night. Okay. So you guys are at you're at the place. The Eibishter is giving you lots of energy to get things. I'm not retiring. I'm not. But there's a time in life when you do have less energy. And I think I was right to tell him, find someone 35 years old. Find someone who can take this under their wing and go with it. This is their whole life, right? And that's harder to do when you're at 65, to take something completely new under you and this is your life. Okay, this is your life, but you know what? Grandkids are the coolest thing in the world. There is nothing like grandkids. So it's going to be hard to keep someone at work all day if you can, go hang out with some grandkids, right? So it's just a lot of competition later in life. Good competition, Baruch Hashem, but they're just the greatest. You want to see some pictures? You're at that place, and it's your generation that's going to bring Mashiach. The question that everybody asks, and it's a real question. It's not chas v'shalom to belittle the question. Everybody asks it. It's a real question. How can we be Hasidim? We never saw the Rebbe, etc. I get it. I do. I get it. Don't worry. But okay, fine. It's a real question. But bottom line, I'm going to go out inside. Are you allowed to make are you allowed to sing in here? Or is that too much noise for that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to leave. I'm going to walk out somewhere and let you guys, because there's this thing that is unfair in the world. And I feel so good about the fact that I have been part of solving it temporarily. Women, when they leave SEM, rarely get an opportunity to sit with another 30, 40 women and sing the Gunim, which is what they got used to doing in SEM. And then you leave SEM and you don't have that opportunity very often. Men have that opportunity all the time. We Farbrengen and sing the Gunim all the time, right? And, in yeshiva, we say Kedusha in 770. Sing a niggin with 5,000 other people and just, you're taken to another place. Okay. Women don't get that opportunity as much. So I must say one of the nicest things of sitting with women is to leave them in the room and give them the opportunity to sing a niggin together. So I was actually going to say something. I don't remember what it was. So I guess that's my cue to go let you sing a niggin. But I will tell you something that the people who've heard me say this, I apologize. I know you heard me say this, and Beseder, but it's all right. Rav Mendel used to say that people think that in Farbrengens we sing a niggin in order to give the person talking time to think of something else to say. The person talking ran out of things to say, and then they get that serious look and they go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh. And then everybody joins them and they stop singing. They say, all right, okay. So that's not true. That really isn't true. Right, that really isn't true. But Rav Mendel said something very deep. He said it's not true. We don't sing a niggin in order to give the person time to think about something to say. The only reason we say anything at a Farbrengen is that we'll have what to think about when we sing the niggin. That's what Rav Mendel said. Rav Mendel knew what a Farbrengen was about. So I'll go stand outside. I'll go stand outside. I'll pretend that I can't hear you. And sing, but don't, I hate to be annoying. Actually, that's not true. Sometimes it's enjoyable being annoying, but right now I'm really not trying to be annoying. Don't sing, 7 songs, a third of the song, and do a whole medley of the, greatest Lubavitch hits. Find one niggin, sing it again, get into it, think about it, okay? And I'm gonna go hide outside. Oh yeah, I don't want to take this.
We're gonna pause the recording.
Are there people on Zoom?
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
A nice big crowd.
You just got off from Zoom.
Yeah,
She was driving, so she driving to.
there were other people there. So cool.
Is Bracha Munchen on Zoom? She asked me today, is it going to be Zoom? So I'm going to give it to her if she's not on Zoom. So Bracha, you weren't on Zoom?
I don't see a bracha yet, but
No, it's late. Well, actually, she's probably. I have to go back. What? No problem. No, that's a little thing that's standing up in the air.
hot socket.
We have to go back to Ladaitcha because Ladaitcha is, Rabbi says some really interesting things about the inyan of Ladaitcha, which we got there and then ended up somewhere else, sort of. Mashiach has to come from us. Our avodah has to come from us. Meaning the Eibishter tells us what to do, gives us lots of help in terms of how to do it. But interestingly enough, most of the help in how to do it came milamata. It's called Torah Sheba'al Peh. Now, I understand that Torah Sheba'al Peh came milamayla, but you and I experienced Torah Sheba'al Peh. I mean, I was just learning today's Rambam. So, of course, what's today's Rambam? The Shalshelet of Torah Sheba'al Peh. So I made it from Moshe all the way down, and then they said, come in. So next time you sing, I'll go from Rav Ashi all the way back up, which is, but interesting enough, where did that all come from? Like the real hows of it, like mamish, how to do it, where'd that come from? It's all milamata, right? Yevusha didn't say how to keep Shabbos. He just said keep Shabbos. Now, I understand, he really did. Of course, it came from Moshe and it came from the Abraham was given to Moshe on Sinai and Torah Sheba'al Peh was taught. But that being said, all of those discussions of the Tanoim and the Amarayim that we learn, that's all Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is coming milamata to help us understand how to do the Ratzon of the Abraham, which comes milamayla. Because everything's milamata. Everything comes from below. It's the way the Eibishter wants it. The Eibishter wanted a dir b'tachtenim, right? Chazal say the Medrash in Tanchuma, Parshas Nosei, that the Eibishter wanted. He had a nisavele kadosh baruch leis baruch dir b'tachtenim. Okay, say that. So he wants a dir b'tachtenim. So what does Chassidus explain? It's not just that he wants a dir b'tachtenim. He wants the tachtenim to make him a dira. Because if you want a dir b'tachtenim, so make a dir b'tachtenim. What do you want from me? Create a world, make that world a place that has some aspect of tachtein to it, but that you're revealed there. And it's done. The Eibishter can't make a dir b'tachtenim? Don't say that, right? Or else you get yourself in a little bit of trouble. The Eibishter can do whatever he wants. Right, and everything he did, and it's such an important point in Chassidus, everything he did was beratzon and not behechrich. Anything the Eibishter does is because he wants to, not because he has to. Doesn't have to do anything. There has to be an Eilam Atzilus in order for there to be an Eilam Abriya? No. The Eibishter wanted there to be an Eilam Atzilus, and from that Atzilus there came something Briya, and from that Yitzira, and from that Asiya, and then Asiya Gashmis. That's all because the Eibishter wants it that way, not because it has to be that way. Yes, in Chassidus, we often explain how it has to be that the light is affected, but that's only because the Eibishter wants it that it has to be. And if the Eibishter wants it that isn't the way it works, so it won't work that way. Why are there 10 spheres? Because the Eibishter wants there to be 10 spheres. Not 10 spheres because there have to be. The Eibishter wants 10. Why 10? I don't know. Baruch Hashem, he doesn't want 12 because then we'd have an extra finger. Well, you would, right? I mean, if there were 12 spheres, you'd have an extra finger and you'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something, then 10, which would mean one group of 12s and 0 units. That's how you'd count, right? What are those two? I don't know, make them up. 9, shmen, ben, 10. Right? But he didn't do that. He did 10. I mean, it would always be 10, but 12 would be 10. Because what's 10? One group of whatever it is and 0 units. So there's 10 spheres because he wants there to be. What does he want? He wants there to be a dir b'tachtenim, but he didn't. His taiva wasn't that there should be a dir b'tachtenim. His taiva is that you and I should create from a dir b'tachtenim. Because he created a dir b'tachtenim. It's called Gan Eden. And then he destroyed it. But the Rebbe goes a step further. Don't ever eat these chips if you have to talk. No, it's not like, I mean, I have this stuff to wash it down. It's just there. It's not like, oh, give him some water. Well, Fresca is just water with poison. So it's all the same stuff. I allow myself to drink Fresca whenever I'm in the United States because there isn't Fresca in Eretz Yisrael. So it's my little treat of completely unhealthy, glow in the dark food because there isn't any, and so I don't even have to worry about a taiva for it in Eretz Yisrael. So, The Eibishter wants a dir b'tachtenim. He wants you and I to make a dir b'tachtenim, and so when he created this dir b'tachtenim, and that's called Gan Eden, and then he, so to speak, on some level, destroyed that. But the Rebbe goes a step further. The Rebbe explains that when the Eibishter looks at the world, what does he see? He sees a dir b'tachtenim. When the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, looks at Eilam Hazeh, he sees a place of concealment. He sees himself. Why nothing's concealed to the Eibishter? The Helen Vester is only relative to us, but the Eibishter sees Helen Vester, he sees himself. It's all just him. Right? He sees it. He sees that it's all him. And what's the issue? The issue is that you and I have to experience reality that way. That's our Aveda. L'daitcho. Has to come from us. Has to not be. Yes, the Eibishter told us to do that, but it has to be. We bring it about by making it our reality. Remember once, our son Leibish was in Har Nof, and someone was Farbrengen, and Leibish doesn't usually do this, but the person, I shouldn't say the person was Farbrengen. The person was talking. They weren't Farbrengen, and Leibish got upset, so he sort of took over the Farbrengen, which is not his personality usually, but he did it, and Baruch Hashem, because it turned into a great Farbrengen. But what was he koching in? Well, obviously something he was thinking about. He said he was thinking about this in davening. Ein lanu elihim zulas choselu. Right? Shachos. Ein lanu elihim zulas choselu. We have no elokim other than you. Ein lanu elokim zulas choselu. You ever think about that when you say it? Ein lanu elokim zulas choselu. There's nothing but you. And yet what? A Beicher B'Ama Yisrael B'Yavo. That Ein Lanu Elim Zulas. That Eibishter Beicher B'Ama Yisrael B'Yavo. He loves us. He chose us, and he wants us to do what it is that he wants us to do. He chose us. He loves us. Mamish. What does that mean exactly? I don't know exactly because I don't know exactly what it means. The Eibishter loves something. Baruch Hashem, we've experienced this thing called love, so we understand what it is to some degree. I mean, it's hard to describe it, right? People have been trying to describe love in intellectual terms for a very long time, and they always fail because love is not an idea, it's an emotion. So intellect can't really understand it, right? You can't prove love in a laboratory. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, you just can't prove it in a laboratory. Like God. Can't prove God in a laboratory either. Doesn't mean he doesn't exist. He's just not an idea. You don't only prove ideas in laboratories, right? You can't prove emotions in a laboratory. You want to prove emotions exist by monitoring some person who gets hit and then gets kissed. Oh, you see, positive emotion, negative emotion. Who says? Well, I don't know. That's what we call it. Right, that's what we call it. Okay, prove it to me. I don't know. Can't prove it, you're right. Can't prove love. But Baruch Hashem, most of us have experienced it, so we know it is. Can't prove God. Hopefully most of us have experienced that a little bit somehow in some interesting way, and so we know it is. You can prove 2 + 2 is 4, because that's just a convention. 2 + 2 is 4, that's just the way it is. Right? I mean, we made it up. There's no 2 and there's no 4. There's just a bunch of 1s. But you and I, based on God told us, count the cows and you'll get to 10, and the 10th one's holy. Oh, there's such a thing called not just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. No. Go 1, 2, 8, 6, 3, 2, 7, 5, 10. Beautiful. Now that one, move them aside, put them over there. Now do that again. And every 10th one, that's what so God told us to do it. He taught us that there's such a thing called counting. Okay. But it's not absolute, right? It's just, and you and I have this convention called, which works, right? And 2 + 2 is 4. That's the way it is. 2 + 2 is 5, wrong. No, but I feel that it is. And you feel wrong because 2 + 2 is not 5. 2 + 2 is 4. There's no such thing anywhere in all of the universe that 2 + 2 is 5. It doesn't exist. 2 + 2 can be 11 if you're in base 3, right? 2 plus 2 is one group of threes and one unit. Ooh, base 3. Whatever that means. But 2 plus 2 can be 11. Can't be 12. Because if you're in base 2, then there's no 2. 2 is 10. One group of 2s and 0 units. Math is sort of interesting. Right? I mean, I always found it interesting until they tried to teach me trigonometry, and then my brain turned off and said, don't ever, ever mention mathematics to me again, ever. That was the end of me. Sine, cosine, this is absolutely irrelevant. Just the other day, I was talking about this one, and they actually told me that it's not irrelevant. I said, why not? He said, because evidently, and I don't understand why, it's all right. If you want to get a ship from one place to another place on the ocean, evidently trigonometry is the way to do it, right? Which is, I always wondered why they were, that's evident. I don't know how. I this is not our discussion. I did you poor people, me venting about trigonometry. But that is evidently how you figure out how to get the ship from that port to that port over that round water that looks flat, but isn't, right? Right? I mean, it's not. So evidently, that's where trigonometry comes in. How do you figure out to take what looks like flat, but it's not? It goes. So how do you figure that out? So if anybody's trying to ruin your life with trigonometry, at least know that there is reason to this madness. There's some reason why someone figured all this out. Right? But everything exists because the Eibishter wants it to exist. So nothing has to be. And if the Eibishter wanted the world to be a place where he was completely and totally revealed without any Aveda on our part, then that's what the world would look like. But that's not what the taiva was. The taiva was that you and I make for him a dir b'tachtonim. That's what he wants. Why? Kachazeh. Don't by a taiva fragment this kind of kasha. You don't ask a kasha about a taiva. Right? Someone comes in on a hot, stinky, sweaty New York summer afternoon, right? Comes in looking all red and schwitzy. They come in and say, wow, just such a taiva for a hot cup of tea. What? What are you talking about? I said, oh, for the last 5 minutes, I've just been thinking about having a hot cup of tea, but you look all schwitzy. I mean, if they came in and said, I have a taiva for cold water, you would say, a taiva is a perfectly reasonable thing to want cold water because you're all hot and schwitzy. No, they have a taiva for a hot cup of tea. Can you explain it? No, but that's their taiva. That's a taiva. A taiva is something that can't be explained rationally. It's a rutzin that can't be explained rationally. And if it can be, we call it a rutzin. So the Eibishter had a taiva for a dir b'tachtonim, something that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He just has. Okay, that's what he has. And what does he want? He wants you and I to make it. It's all a daita. Comes from us. And everything that we do in our life comes from us. No one can do anything for us. I mean, people help us, right? I mean, of course, people, someone can fill up your tank with gas and someone can teach you things but in terms of your life, what you accomplish in your life, no one else can accomplish that for you. You have to do it. And you have unbelievable kayches to do it. And you have to believe in your ability to do it. Don't believe that you can't do it. Someone else can and you can't. That's not true. It's not true. It's the biggest cop-out in the world. That I can't. It's not true. Whenever you have those feelings that I can't. Now, there are certain things that are extremely difficult to do, and you might say, you know what, I really can't accomplish that. Okay, that's fine. You might obviously make decisions in life as to what you're going to try to do. I get that. But in terms of the things that really matter in life, that have to get done. So every single one of those things we can do. Why? Well, because they have to get done. So obviously we can do it. And if you think you can't, close your eyes, stand in front of the Rebbe, and explain to the Rebbe why you can't. See how far you get before you say, oh, forget it. I'm not doing this. This is not shaykh. This isn't happening. And then you'll go, okay, I got it. You're going to explain to the Lubavitcher Rabbi why you can't do what you're supposed to do, right? Oh, yeah, he'll understand. He'll go, oh, fine. Okay, you're a putter. All of my other Chassidim have to do it, but you don't, right? So you know that that's a ridiculous thing. And as soon as you begin to say the words to the Rebbe, as you closed your eyes and said to the Rebbe that I can't, as soon as you even began to explain it, you realize that that's a silly thing. You know, sometimes you have a question, you want to ask the question, and then as you start formulating the question, you realize it's not a question. Like, I'm not going to ask this question. It's not a question. You already have the answers. You start formulating the question. Okay, just when those times in life when you're not sure. And again, there are things that we can't do, right? There are things that each and every one of us, you know, that we just might not be able to accomplish, right? I mean, I think if someone were to ask us to write a book in a foreign language that we don't know about a topic we've never heard about and to finish the book in a month, we would say, I can't do that. That's reasonable. I can't do that. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't learn the language, learn the subject, and write the book in a month. I cannot do that physically, intellectually. Right, I got you. Okay. Bring Mashiach. Does that fit into that category? No. Why do you know? Because you have to do that. That's why you were sent here. That's why we're here. So can we do that? Yes. It's Gimel Tamuz. It's Dalit Tamuz. It's Hey Tamuz. It's Gimel Tamuz, meaning we're still, Baruch Hashem, walk around the neighborhood. It's still Gimel Tamuz. It's the all sorts of people who are here for one reason only. Because it's Gimel Tamuz. That's why all these strange-looking people are walking around the neighborhood. Right? Still, you see a lot of people with pulling suitcases. Okay, it's Gimel Tamuz. Why can't you find a place to sit in 770? This is still Gimel Tamuz. This morning was still Gimel Tamuz. Very hard to find a place to sit in 770. Baruch Hashem. Tomorrow morning, probably easy. It's my guess. A lot of people left today. But it's Gimel Tamuz. And what's Gimel Tamuz about? Gimel Tamuz isn't about, what we had. Gimel Tamuz is who we are. What are we about? What are we supposed to do? Who are we? What are we about? What are we supposed to do? We're Lubavitch. We're the Rebbe. We're about Mashiach. That's what Lubavitch is. My brother told me something great today, Mamish. No, I was on a phone call last night. He was at the oil for Shabbos with his son, and he ran into all sorts of people. So there was a group. In our neighborhood. There's two brothers who became Lubavitchers. They grew up in a Litvische, Chassidus family. I think they went to Litvish yeshivas. They both gravitated towards a more Chassidus view of the world. And in the last 3-4 years, they became Lubavitchers. One of them started growing his beard 6 months ago, meaning he always had a trimmed beard. So. And they're really amazing guys. And they opened up on our Lubavitch shul is a block out of the neighborhood, and it has a whole story and a history of that shul. And the Rebbe gave a lot of brachas to that shul, and so that shul is still there. It was the Arab schoolhouse of a neighborhood called Der Yassin, which is a famous Arab neighborhood that theoretically Menachem Begin massacred Arabs there, which is not true. But that's what they like to write in the newspapers. And of course, everything they write in the newspapers must be true because they just keep writing it. So everybody figures it must be true. So it's not true, but okay. So that's this village that's turned from Der Yassin into a village called Kfar Shaul. And just east of it is a neighborhood called Givat Shaul. And just west of it is a neighborhood called Har Nof. So our shul, it was the schoolhouse of Der Yassin. And then it became the shul of a group of people who lived in Kfar Shaul, refugees from Europe, about 15 families who lived around the area. All their kids left when they built Har Nof. So Lubavitch took over the shul to make a minyan for the old people who were still living in that neighborhood, but they didn't have a minyan because their kids had all left to other places. So Lubavitch came and we made a minyan, and then they all died out, and it just ended up our shul. But it's out of the neighborhood. So these two guys made a minyan in the neighborhood, They don't call it Chabad because there's a shul up there and they don't want to start, making machlekes, etc. So it's called the Merkaz of Chassidus or Mashu. But interesting enough, they found a space for it, and so one of the guys who was part of the group wanted to name it after his father. Even though his father's alive, he wanted to name it. He said, I'll give you 100,000 shekels if it's in my father's name. What's his father's name? Menachem. Okay, so it's called Beis Menachem. They built a women's section. Some guest came, Svarda Shagai from France, he said, there has to be a nicer women's section. I want to pay for a nicer women's section. I want to name it after my wife. What's her name? Chana. So they have Chana over there and Beis Menachem over here, and they've got it, and they're doing amazing. So they're whole chevra who are not Lubavitchers, but they daven in this Lubavitch minyan, and they have a daf yomi shir. There's 45 guys there every morning. It's really interesting little geschäft they have over there. So a bunch of these guys came for Gimel Tamuz. A bunch of them. One of them, the guy who gave the $100,000, 100,000 shekels, he put on a sirtuk for the first time with Gimel Tamuz. Yes, Shabbos. It's another guy, really good guy, Tzvika. Tzvika's just a character. Grew up in Flatbush. Probably Tzvika's father came from a Chassidish family. His grandfather was a Chassid, came from Europe, sent his son, Tzvika's father, to Torah V'das, because that's where they all sent them. So they stopped being Chassidish, more Litvish, because they all went to Torah V'das in those days. And Tzvika's, but he's got a very Chassidish. What does Tzvika do for a living? All sorts of stuff. But his main income is Tzvika runs a super fancy Pesach in Mexico. So he disappeared. I didn't know this until this year. Last year he didn't do one, obviously. He disappears to Mexico, sets it all up, obviously knows all the shluchim in the area, is very close with them, does a fundraiser for the shluchim Meitzi Shabbos at his super Pesach event. He does a Sudas Mashiach with the shluchim, and at the end of Sudas Mashiach, they have a fundraiser for the local shluchim. All these rich people come. He said, look, there's someone spreading Yiddishkeit here. He's like a wild guy, amazing guy, really special guy. But a character, basically no beard, wears jeans and a nice shirt and a jacket when he does. He's a real good guy. So my brother ran into Tzvika at the oil on Shabbos. Tzvika said such an amazing line. He said, I could really do this. I really, really like this, but I have a problem. So I said, what's your problem? He said, if you're a Lubavitcher, then all there is Lubavitch. Lubavitch is who you are, what you're about, and everything to do with you. He said, I like, dipping a little here and a little here. I go to this Rebbe, and I say, I like that. I have a good time with that because it's not, he said, it's not mechayev. It doesn't obligate me to do anything. He said, if I really if I decided that I'm a Lubavitch, that means you're Lubavitch. That's who you are. And I don't know whether that might be too much, too obligatory. Whoa, is that real? Let's take someone who's, so to speak, not a Lubavitcher to explain to a Lubavitcher what it means to be a Lubavitcher. It means it's everything you are. Okay. But it all comes from Ladaitcha. There's a tzivui milamayla. But ultimately, it all comes from us. Sensitizing ourselves to what it is that the Eibishter wants from us and trying to bring that about in our everyday lives. As a parent, I understand, something's happening with the kids. So you run and you find some book that tells you how to deal with it. There's no book that tells you how to deal with it. I mean, there is. It's called Every Torah Book Ever Written. Okay, but this particular event, what has to happen at that moment? A tremendous sensitivity to the fact that God is orchestrating this event, and you have a chance in this moment to do something positive in your relationship with your children, And somehow I have to figure out what that is and how to make that happen. And the one thing I know, that if I get angry, I blew it. That's the one thing I know. How am I supposed to actually do it? I'm not sure, but I know one thing. If I get angry, it's over, I lose. Okay, now go deal with it. Oh, that's pretty hard. Well, it's called being a parent. It's what a parent is. A parent is dealing with that all the time. It's called being a wife in a relationship with a husband all the time, trying to be sensitive to what it is that he needs from me so that I can give him that. Now, hopefully that's what he's doing relative to you, but I'm talking to a group of women, so I'm going to talk about what women do, not what men do. Actually, what was I doing? And a bunch of my guys are getting married, so they asked if we could sit for an hour and talk about marriage. That's what I was doing the hour before I came into this room, was sitting with a bunch of guys who were getting married next week about marriage. And what was that all about? What the man does. What does the man do? He listens and goes, ooh, that must have been hard. What doesn't he do? Well, why don't you try to do this and this and this? Blew it. She stops talking, picks up. It used to be in the old days, she'd pick up a book. Now she picks up her phone and she looks at her phone and you're toast and, go back under your rock. So we talked about that because that's what husbands are supposed to do. Listen to wives. Right? What do men want? Men want to be respected. Which is why women have a Yetzer Hara not to give men respect. Seriously, because that's going to be a woman's Yetzer Hara in her marriage. What do women want? Commitment. What's the man's Yetzer Hara going to be in his marriage? To be, it's not that he's not committed, but the woman might interpret the fact that he really does want to go to that Farbrengen more than stay home as if he's not committed to the family. It's not true. He is committed, but he wants to be at that Farbrengen. And the woman just doesn't understand because there was a women's Farbrengen the other night before and she didn't go because she's committed to what's going on around here because that's how women are committed. That's just not how men are committed. So women want that commitment from men. Okay, but that's not your problem. I mean, it is your problem. He's your problem. But your problem is that you have to make sure that you give him what he wants, and what he wants is that he thinks that you respect him. And you should. Does he always deserve respect? Well, you don't always deserve commitment.
So how do men experience respect?
That it's clear that you think that he can do what it is that has to be done in a successful way without you telling him. Because he really doesn't like to be told how to do something that's his responsibility. If you want him to do it, so get out of the way. When he goes shopping, don't tell him the thing he didn't buy. Right? I mean, no one likes that, right? You wouldn't like it if every time you came back shopping, he'd say, why aren't there avocados? There weren't any. Well, why don't you go to another store? Oh, gee, nice guy, right? Well, women do that to men all the time. I mean, you all are nodding, right? Because you can imagine, right? Women do that to men. They do that all the time. As if he couldn't figure out how to shop without you, right? Like, of course he can. Now, he's probably not going to do as good a job as you, well, because you're running the house and he's not. And there's things he doesn't know that are missing. Well, because he doesn't cook dinner, maybe. I mean, maybe he does. So then he'll know that you need more cooking paper, baking paper, whatever it's called. Right? See, I'm not the one cooking it. That's why our children live through all of their years in our house, because I'm not the one doing the cooking. Right? So they all left healthy human beings, Baruch Hashem. But the baking paper. So he knows you're out of baking. How is he supposed to know you're out of baking paper? He does. In all fairness, he doesn't open the drawer and notice, oh, the last piece just came out of the baking paper thing. What did I do today? I didn't do it. I mean, I facilitated it. I gave our daughter-in-law my credit card and said, they were talking about buying in Costco. They wanted to get some stuff in Costco, but they didn't go. They were going to, whatever you do, you order it online. I don't know how it works. So I said, okay. So I remember my father used to do this when he came to visit us in Eretz Yisrael. He would take us shopping, and he would take a shopping cart behind our shopping cart. And whatever we put in our shopping cart, he would put in his shopping cart, and he would buy us 2 of everything we needed, which was nice. We were a struggling young couple, and that made a difference. It made a difference. We'd buy, we bought 2 things of cornflakes. He put 2 in his, and then he'd have it, and then he would pay for both. So I'm not in the financial situation that my father was when he was my age. He was a doctor in North America, Canada, not America, but okay. But so I just gave her the credit card and I said, buy what you need in Costco because I'm such a sport. So then we were on WhatsApp with my wife. And so I asked her, well, what do you need? So what did she need? Kirkland baking paper on the roll. She loves it, Kirkland. So I got 2 things of baking paper on the roll. I'm committed. Maybe I'm committable, I'm not sure. Committed. Baruch Hashem. And of course, maple syrup, but I didn't have to be told about the maple syrup. That I got all by myself. I said, other than maple syrup, what do we need in Costco? The only thing she said was the baking paper on the roll. So we got the baking paper on the roll. Now I have to figure out how to put it in my suitcase, but that's a separate issue. I have a second one. It's okay. So we'll figure it out. But he doesn't want to be told that what he did wasn't a good job. It might not, meaning that doesn't, now obviously, that doesn't mean there's no such thing as constructive criticism, but it can become something that happens all the time. And so, meaning I don't trust that you can do the job. Now, no one would like that, and especially men. Men really don't like that. It really, because what are they told their whole life? They're responsible to do the job. And now here they are, their favorite person in the whole world is telling them they don't have faith in them to do it. That hurts. That's why men like respect. Is it coming from a place in our Nefesh Bahamas? Okay, but say it, I don't understand. What do you think you're marrying? Marrying a Nefesh Elokis? Seder, good. But there's also a Nefesh Bahamas and a goof there. And in all fairness, that's the person that's the conscious person that you're dealing with moment by moment, just like that's the conscious person in you that he's dealing with moment by moment, right? So men like respect and women like commitment. So the man has to figure out how to make sure that he's, it's like sending that out, that it's obvious that he's committed, hopefully. Wow, I'm impressed. What, it's dying, so you're charging it? Okay. All right. What's the Eibishter like? He likes us. But he gets, he wants us to make for him a dir b'tachtonim, and he's waiting for us to do that. Sometimes we feel that he doesn't really want it to happen because if he really did, so why hasn't it happened already? I mean, what exactly is he waiting for? Okay, good question. That doesn't mean there's going to be an answer to the question. So, I mean, we just have to get weiter, right? And we can't possibly decide, okay, well, we're quitting because obviously it's not true. He doesn't really want to do b'tachtonim. He does. He wants to do b'tachtonim. He wants us to do it. And evidently we haven't done it. Last night when I was speaking, so I mentioned that the last time I was in Crown Heights, so I had the pleasure and merit of something that was always the single, certainly one of, if not the most pleasant part of a visit to Crown Heights was to sit with Rabbi Groner And now, unfortunately, I have to say Olav Shalom, to sit with Rabbi Groner for sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes half an hour, 40 minutes, and just say hello. Sometimes it was just hello, because he was busy. Sometimes he would sit and talk. And interesting, I think it's important that you should know that the first question he would ask as soon as I came in, first of all, it's always an incredibly warm, beautiful, Chassidish smile. And he would always ask, how's the family? And then the second question for the last 15 years has been, what's with the Meidalach? He pushed and pushed and pushed that I should teach women constantly. He was never satisfied with the amount of classes I was giving to women. He knew that my main shlichus is in my note. That's what I do every day, most of the day. But he always asked constantly, what's with the Meidalach? How much you're teaching women? And rarely could I get an answer to, okay, that sounds like enough. I would never say that, ever. I mean, he never did. But the Mayanot had we mentioned earlier, the Mayanot had a dinner last year, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, before COVID, BC, before COVID, right? So we had a dinner, and there was a Farbrengen. So when I was visiting Rabbi Garner, he told 3 stories. So last night I happened to tell 2 of them. So I came down from talking, and there were like a bunch of bochurim sitting. And I sat down just because there was a chair there, a bench. And they said, "No, Rabbi, what's the 3rd story?" Because I said there were 3 stories, but I only told 2 of them. What's the 3rd story? So the 3rd story was that in Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe had problems with his eyes. And so they brought an ophthalmologist to the Rebbe's office, and he checked out the Rebbe and said that I can't do a proper examination here because I just don't have the things I need. And the Rebbe has to come to my office if he wants if you want the Rebbe to have a proper examination. So Rabbi Garner didn't really think that was going to happen. So the doctor said, we'll do it at a time. We can do it 9, 10 o'clock at night. There'll be no one in the building, no one in the office, just you, the Rebbe, and me, the ophthalmologist said to Rabbi Garner. So Rabbi Garner went into the Rebbe and asked, this is what he said. What should we do? So the Rebbe said, fine, they'll go. So they went. Went at one night, about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Rabbi Garner drove the Rebbe to this gentleman's office, and he put the Rebbe in those chairs that the ophthalmologists have with all those things above, and he gave the Rebbe the drops that ophthalmologists put in your eyes to dilate your pupil because they want to see through, right? They want to see to the back of your eye, right? But have you ever noticed when bright light hits your eye, your pupil is mitzam same, so there's just the right amount of light to allow you to see realities, tzimtzum, right? So what your pupil does to light, because if there's too much light, you wouldn't see anything. So the light has to be mitzum sam that allows you to see just right, just how much. Okay. It's not like tzimtzum should be hard to understand. It's what goes on in our eye all day long, right? Okay, so what they dilate the pupil, and then they can look through. It must really be interesting what they see, I must admit, right? So they shine that light, which hurts a little if you've ever done it, right? They shine the light through, and they look and see what's going on with your retina and everything in the back of your eye, cornea, retina, all that other stuff that you learned about in school once. Okay, you forgot with your trigonometry. So he gave the drops to the Rebbe. Now the drops take 5 minutes to work. So he asked Rabbi Groner, while the drops begin to work on the Rebbe's eyes, could I ask the Rebbe a question? And the Rebbe answered yes. So he asked the following question, which is a really interesting question. Can you imagine? The Rebbe just said you can ask me any question you want, right? Now what? we'd all be like struck dumb because we'd think of 5,000 questions and couldn't get one out of our mouth. So he said, this doctor said to the Rebbe, I'm not sure. He said, I assume he referred to the Rebbe as you. I would assume, not knowing that you don't do that. Your Chassidim have done so many amazing things, etc. And he sort of, embellished that a little bit. How could it possibly be that Mashiach hasn't come yet? That was his question. Rabbi Gunnar told me that was his question. So the Rebbe said, Nun Beis, 19, right? Tafshin Nun Beis, no winter. There wasn't anything else. It was only a winter. Right? So the Rebbe said, that's a question I ask myself often. And perhaps the answer is that Mashiach has a very large basket full of the good deeds that Jews do. The basket's getting filled up with all of those good deeds. But it must be that there's room for a few more good deeds in the basket. And so we have to keep filling up the basket with good deeds. And when the basket's full, so then Mashiach can come. That's what the Rebbe said. Then the Rebbe added, and that's why I don't let my Hasidim sleep. There's some good deeds that we have to do. We want to fill up the basket. And evidently the basket's not full, because if the basket were full, we would not be sitting here. This house would, well, maybe we would, but this house would be in Yerushalayim somewhere. I don't think this house is going to be in the Galil. I think the Rabashkins will get a choice spot right in the Yerushalayim. I think that's what they deserve. As close to the Beis HaMikdash as anybody else. Right? Okay. Right? That's what the Rebbe said. And he doesn't let us sleep. Certainly something to that. Doesn't seem to be satisfied with what we do, right? And not in a negative way, in a positive way. Satisfied meaning that's enough. Not satisfied simcha. No, can be besimcha, happy that we're doing what we're doing, but not satisfied to the extent that when you're satisfied, what do you say? That's enough. No, never satisfied. Rabbi told us never to be satisfied with our own Aveda. Everybody in Shoshanat Yerushalayim learns the Maimer.
Question.
Yeah.
Thinking about what you said about what women like in marriage, or especially what men like and need in a marriage relationship, that respect. If the Jewish people are Hashem's wife, and the Gula Shlema that's fully manifest, right? And the Rebbe said we should start living on that new place. Would it make sense to relate to Hashem as a husband and to apply what maybe a man likes or needs to Hashem? And I'm thinking, would it make sense to apply that to kind of like B'tachon? Like instead of saying, like, oh, I need to know how it's going to look, or I need to control how you're doing it.
Wow.
To kind of
That's really
like,
interesting.
hey, like, you know what you're doing.
That's really an amazing idea, no? That's an amazing idea. That's an amazing idea. Meaning, the Abish knows how to shop. No, that's really an amazing idea. I never thought of it. I don't think it's necessary. I mean, everything's connected to Geula because that's what we're trying to do. I don't think it's necessarily connected to Zmana Geula. But if you told this to a Jew 500 years ago, he could also hear it and say, "Whoa!"
But especially now.
Wow, that's really an amazing idea.
And then my question is, how does that come together?
So wait, but hold on. So you're so good at that part. What's the commitment part?
That's also the question.
Because that's us to him, right? No, but that we're the woman, so we want him to be committed, right? Yeah, it's like
Showing up fresh.
Right.
He's listening to us all the time.
Right.
Like we commanded to listen to us.
I guess, yeah. I mean, really, he does, right? But meaning the man really, in the perfect husband, he is committed, but that doesn't mean his wife is not going to think that he's not, right? Okay, so the Eibishter is committed, but we want him to show it more. right? Like, don't kill us. Well, I mean, he's done that to us in the past, right? I mean, no, I mean, those things are very, very, I mean, he's big, we're not talking about taking out the garbage. We're talking about real life and real life issues. Wow, that's really interesting. Think about that one. It's a really interesting idea.
And then my question is, the story you shared, how does that?
Why don't you ask yourself the question? Because you're saying better stuff than me. So, I mean,
We're all in the
yeah.
story. How does that come together with the adding more good deeds together with that like trust that Hashem is taking care of it? Like, how does it all work together?
Well, look, we do. There's no question that bitachon is a key to geula to the extent that we have to have bitachon that the Eibishter will bring the Mashiach, right? Bring geula. I mean, I think that's something that most of us find hard to have, right? I know there's this thing called Mashiach. I get it. Unless, if you live the Rebbe's Sichos from Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, then you can maintain a certain appreciation of the immediacy of it all. Without those Sichos, it's almost impossible. I mean, I learned those Sichos, but still you come across a Sicha and just, it like opens you up to a whole new appreciation of what the Rebbe says and what it means that Mashiach is coming. And it's not, of course, Mashiach's coming, but past the chips. The immediacy of it all and how we really are there. And in Nun Aleph Nun Beis, the Rebbe took all of us to a place, what was very common in Lubavitch, anybody who was serious about things and cared about things and was Farbrengen about things and cooking and things. And so the idea of Mashiach not coming didn't make sense. It really didn't. It just didn't make sense. How can it possibly be that Mashiach hasn't come? Pesach would end. Now in Eretz Yisrael, we had an advantage. Pesach would end, you'd finish Sudas Mashiach. But then seriously, what would we say? Sudas Mashiach by the Rebbe's tomorrow. We always had that fallback position. And it's true. Sudas Mashiach by the Rebbe's tomorrow. Not even in 7 hours. It's a day in 7 hours because in Eretz Yisrael, Sudas Mashiach is on Shvi Shel Pesach because there is no Achron Shel Pesach. So it's a day and a half later that the Rebbe is going to be sitting in Sudas Mashiach. So okay, you know what? That also happened in Nun Aleph. Didn't happen in Beis, but it happened in Mentes. It happened in Nun. It happened in Nun Aleph. So Rebbe took us to a place where the idea of Mashiach not coming literally did not make sense. It just can't be. Now, interesting enough, the Rebbe said it's up to us. Then the Rebbe took us to an incredible place. And we thought he was going to do it all because he's doing it all. He took us to that place. There's no question. It's not like we did anything. All he had to do was listen. He said this. Sit there, watch, listen, see what was going on. It's like, to not be sensitive to Elokus on Yom Kippur, you have to be pretty insensitive, right? To not feel anything on Yom Kippur, like you have to, if you have a Yom Kippur go by, you don't feel anything, you go, whoa, where am I holding in life? I mean, what's going on here? Right? Okay, so that's what it was like then. Meaning, if you weren't koching in Mashiach and you then you just weren't part of what was going on. Okay, Beseder, there was an interval in between, obviously, of a strange time in Nun Beis, Nun Gimel. But then Gimel Tamuz, the Rabbi told us it's up to us. Gimel Tamuz certainly makes it obviously up to us. Whoever's not giving us that, in terms of our immediate, our revealed connection, the Rebbe is not giving us that push to stay so connected to the idea of Mashiach that the fact that Mashiach hasn't come is more difficult to understand than the fact that Mashiach can come. I think most people today would say they probably are, they're avoiders to convince themselves the fact that Mashiach can come, not that they're so surprised that he hasn't. Why? Well, because we haven't done the avodah yet, I guess, if that's where I'm holding. Right? Because what's the avodah? Well, to get to the place where the Rebbe took us without the Rebbe taking me there, because it has to be l'daita, it has to be that you've internalized it, so it's who you are, not simply because the Rebbe is taking you there. That's the avodah. That Mashiach is that immediate.
Could you clarify, actually, yeah, I just missed it, like how the diet club practically works in the, like how do you practically carry out the diet club? Is it listening to your intuition? Is it just like
It's that you,
like everyone's talent is different. Even into like how do you figure out like, okay, like there's these questions, there's always like, hey, this is my way of doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like how do you figure that out?
well, we've been talking about l'daita in terms of internalizing your relationship to the Eibishter, that it becomes something, it becomes yours. It's very much who you are consciously, and you develop a certain intuitive appreciation of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants in terms of the moment. So that will, I mean, everybody lives that in a different way because they have different circumstances in their life, right? But l'daita is that the Eibishter becomes a real part of my life. That's l'daita. That's what we've been talking about. It's interesting. The Rebbe says, I wanted to make sure that I said this because it sort of we passed it by and I forgot. And I'm glad you asked about l'daita. The Rebbe says in Mem Tes an amazing thing. Whose l'daita is it in the Torah? No, Moshe's. Shlach lecha Moshe l'daita. So the Rebbe says an amazing thing, that since it's Moshe's l'daita and Moshe is an ish emes, so then by definition, what Moshe does based on the l'daita of Moshe will be successful. So the Meraglim was ultimately successful, even though there were aspects of it that obviously weren't, but it aroused in the Jewish people a greater desire to go to Eretz Yisrael, the whole story, even though in a backhanded way. We see that from the Mapilim, who went right away afterwards, and that ultimately, if it's the l'daita of Moshe, then by definition, it's serious. It's successful, I'm sorry. And that's very important for you and I, because what's, so to speak, the l'daita of the Rebbe? Shia. Gulamitis v'shlema. Now, obviously, it's the Eibishter's Indian, but the Rebbe is the one that's, brought that down into Eilam Hazeh in such an incredibly real and intense way. The Rebbe is going to be successful. There's no way that the Rebbe is not going to be successful. It's not happening. Now, we have to do it. We're the facilitators of that. But the Rebbe's l'daita, which is Mashiach. I mean, it's interesting. Rav Amar, I don't know whether you were at the Siyum Rambam last night. So when Rav Amar spoke, the chief rabbi, former chief Sephardi rabbi of Israel, very, very special Jew, who learned in Lubavitch. So he talked about the Rebbe and Mashiach, how the Rebbe made Mashiach real for a whole generation. He said, the Mashiach was just like out there. And he said, the Rebbe made Mashiach something so much part of our everyday conversation, our everyday life. And what. Okay. So that it's going to be successful.
What is the fact that in the days, when Rabbi said about Mashiach, that he's far about, Mashiach already, and we have to open up our eyes. How does that fit in?
Adarabah, that very much that what we're talking
Like, is it fair to say we still have to bring Mashiach, or we say that?
Well, no.
We're in this process and it's already started, and we're just integrating it more and more.
Well, in all fairness, I mean, you should really quote the Rebbe on that, right? No, the avodah is not to bring Mashiach. What's the avodah? To be makabel Mashiach, which is your question. Now we say bring, but really that's not true, right? If we're honest with the Rebbe, it's to be makabel. right? The Rebbe said very, very clearly that the Iker Ved of the Shlichus today is Parsh Chai Nun Beis, that the Iker of Shlichus today is to be Makabel Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu, and then the Rebbe said to the Shluchim, that means go back, accept Mashiach yourself, in your house, in your neighborhood, in your city, in your state, right? That's the Iker Veda. Now, there's a Machlekes in Lubavitch what that means, which is fine. That's perfectly reasonable. I don't understand why anybody would think this, bring an end to the history of the world is going to happen. Oh, it should be pretty easy. Oh, we'll figure this out, right? Okay, so there's a big machlekes. What does it mean to be makabel pnei Mashiach tzidkenu? Some people say that means to be makabel the Lubavitcher Rebbe as Mashiach. Other people, now, even the people who don't say that that's what that means relative to the outside, the vast majority of those people understand in terms of their own personal relationship with the Rebbe that they think the Lubavitcher Rebbe is Mashiach. Okay, but do I go tell other people that? Oh, so there's a machlekes about that. Fine, that's reasonable that there should be a machlekes about it as long as everybody gets along. I mean, that's the problem in the machlekes. Not that there's a machlekes. That makes perfect sense. I understand Rav and Abaye didn't disagree. Of course they disagree. Could they eat at each other's table and be kind to each other? Yes. The problem isn't that we disagree. Of course we disagree. I mean, why? What's the havamina that this is going to be so easy? We're really honestly talking about the end of the history of the world. I mean, it's not like let's figure out how to buy ice cream. So, okay, fine. So, but the Aveda is Kabbalah's Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu. And the simple lowest common denominator of that is that I have to accept personally, meaning that there'll be a Veda outside of me, but there has to be the Veda inside me before I can take it outside. Is that even though the Rebbe at certain points said the fact that you're having problems with the issue doesn't mean that everybody around you has to suffer, right? The Rebbe did say that about this particular Indian, but it's still, we have to internalize it so that we are people who've been Makabel Mashiach. What does that mean? What does that mean? I don't understand how as an individual I can be makabel pnei Mashiach tzidkenu without understanding that the Rebbe is Mashiach. But if there's someone who doesn't think the Rebbe is Mashiach, and so they have to figure out that Aveda. Fine, I'm sure there's incredibly wonderful people who could explain that to you. I can't, because I don't relate to the Aveda that way. I think personally I relate to that Aveda as me accepting the fact that the Rebbe is Melech HaMashiach. Not because it's a nice thing to put on a sign or song to sing, but meaning then I have the problem of the overhanging tree in my head, right? Okay, it's nice, but Yechi Melech, but. No, there's no but. That's reality. Well, okay. And maybe yes on my bumper sticker, but that's still not where it has to be. It has to be the Einoid Milvade of me. Okay. And that everything we do is trying to bring about the revelation of that in ourselves, but more in the world at large. How much do you have to get other people to accept that idea in order for it to happen? That is an interesting question. I don't know. I don't pretend to have a monopoly on the answer. My son, with his big, huge Yechi Yarmulke, learned in Sfas for 3 years. He's, you can check off all the right boxes for Tzfati. Oh, that's Tzfati. That means he probably can't talk without drooling or something, right? Okay. So he was on Shlichus in Australia for 6 months. And for some of that time, they were in Tasmania. And for some of that time, they were working in Dudu Leader's Chabad House in Melbourne. And Dudu, at that point, had so many Israelis that he actually had a yeshiva running every day in the Chabad House in Melbourne. Yeah, one sec. I just want, okay. I thought you were asking a question. So he and I were Farbrengen on the telephone. And this is he grew up in Yerushalayim, which is, pretty Chassidically challenged. But then he went to yeshiva in Lud and in Sfas. And Lud in those days was pretty stark a place of, Mashiach. And then he learned in Sfas. Then he came to 770. And then he went on shlichus to Australia. Now, Australia is somewhat different than Sfas, right? So we were talking on the phone. He said, it takes so long to even imagine talking about Mashiach with people that you meet here, because there's so many places you have to get to first before they'll in any way, shape, or form understand that idea in a sophisticated way. Besides what we were talking about earlier, a better world. Okay, everybody's into a better world. Fine. That part of Mashiach, well, that's fine. That's the Messiah. Okay, but I mean, Mashiach, it was so interesting. Meaning he's a thinking kid, and he realized you can't do what you do in Eretz Yisrael here in Australia. I remember once going on. We were. It was Sukkot. Eretz Yisrael is just so different. It was Sukkot, and we were driving out to my wife's brother lives in a yeshuv on the Petach Tikva side of Yehuda v'Shomron, the north of Yerushalayim. So there's the sort of Tel Aviv Petach Tikva side, and there's the Yerushalayim side. There are different types of people in the yeshuvim. So we were driving, and there's roadblocks. There's soldiers at roadblocks. So we would always take a lulav and esrog, and at every roadblock we get out and do mitzvayim with the soldiers at the roadblocks. So we're standing at a big roadblock. We're like 8 or 10 soldiers. So we got out, and the kids used to love this. And they get out and they jump around and give lulav and esrog to the soldiers. It's always a lot of fun. So we're doing lulav and esrog with a bunch of the soldiers. All of a sudden, a car comes flying through, and he beeps and goes, like, good job. But I don't know, it didn't look like he had taken lulav that day. I wasn't like I had ruach hakodesh, but it just like he was saying, yay, I like that. But so I went, as he's flying by, I mean, there was a roadblock, so he had slowed down a little bit. And he disappears. 2 minutes later, he comes back. He turned around on the highway, came back, pulled his car up and said, me too. Now he's Israeli, right? He reaches into his glove compartment, takes out a yarmulke and puts it on his head. Israelis. They're very Jewish Israelis. No, they are. They're just Jewish, right? I mean, that's why they're obnoxious, right? So American Jews aren't very Jewish. They're just like people in Nebraska who are very friendly. So I was holding a yarmulke in my hand that I was giving to people. The yarmulke had a statement on the yarmulke. Had a little. It's not a verse in the Torah, whatever, right? Okay. So this guy who was so interesting. I'm just explaining, what Israel is all about. It's so interesting. I was blown away. This guy, he's got a yarmulke on. And he takes he's about to reach out to the lulav, and he sees in my hand a yechi yarmulke. He takes off his yarmulke, takes the yechi yarmulke, puts it on his head, and he says, "Zeh ma sheni zocher mihodu." This is what I remember from India. He just wanted his yechi yarmulke. So now in Australia, that's just not happening, right? I mean, it's a completely different aveda. Talking to an Israeli, whether it was right or wrong at the beginning is really an interesting question, and I'm not going there. It doesn't matter. Meaning, it did then. 25 years ago, when people, right after Gimel Tamuz, when people started putting pictures of the Rebbe on every highway in Israel with the word Mashiach underneath, it might not have been ba'ifan miskabel. It might be that people didn't understand it then. Now, since that's happened for 25 years in Eretz Yisrael, everybody in Eretz Yisrael relates Lubavitcher Rebbe and Mashiach are synonymous. I'm not talking about the religious population, I'm talking about the non-religious population, the so-called non-religious population. The Rebbe Lubavitch and Mashiach are synonymous in Eretz Yisrael. On the newscast, when they talk about Rebbe, Mashiach, it's, They're synonymous. I mean, it worked. It might not have been the right thing to do at the beginning. I don't know. That's an interesting question. You have to talk about it. You think about it. Was it a miskabel? Maybe that's not what the Rabbi wants. That's a real question. 25 years later, it certainly was pale. Now, Australia, completely different. Completely different. So how do you talk about Mashiach in Australia? So here was this kid, he was in Sfas, and going on Mitzrayim, and who knows what they were doing up there. I mean, I didn't ask. Right, so it was Mitzrayim, and I don't know, they're probably putting Mashiach stickers on the Kinneret, seeing if they'd stick. I don't know. And now he's in Australia and he's dealing with a completely different world. So how do you bring Mashiach to Australia? So that's really that, so that then now there's real work. How do you do it, and how do you talk about it, and how do you make people understand it and appreciate it? You're going to talk to the Lubavitcher Rebbe Mashiach. They don't know what you're talking about. They have no clue what you're talking about. So here's this Tzfati who's supposed to be a mindless moron, right? So it's not a mindless moron. He's saying, you just can't do it here like you do in Eretz Yisrael. It just doesn't work. Okay, so what do you do? We were talking about it. Okay, so it's going to take, it's a much longer process. It's going to take a while to get someone into the whole idea of Yiddishkeit b'chalal and understand mitzvahs and understand, a little bit about Torah and which many of your average Australian do because they have a much better education than North Americans in terms of Jewish things. But still, it's going to take a long time. Okay, so I mean, we have time. I mean, we don't, but we do. We don't have any choice, right? So you do whatever you have to do. Depends who you're talking to. Depends who you're talking to. But we also have to talk to ourselves.
I just want to say thank you. I have to go to my pile of cover stuff right now. We're learning questions and answers and Ramos with us, love Mashiach, and discuss the identity of Mashiach and how to identify Mashiach. So I'm going to go translate this and bring it into action.
Hold on. This is what, 11 o'clock at night? You have that chavrusa?
Schedule.
Wait, what is it? It's Monday, Sunday? Where are we holding? Monday. Is it Oh, no, it's just a Gimel. It's not like this happens every Monday. Sunday. But Gimel Tamuz wiped it out, so now it's Monday. At 11 o'clock at night. Where are they? Still also 11 o'clock at night. But their clocks freeze. Amazing. Do I know the person you're learning with in Toronto? Do I know the person you're learning with in Toronto?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe, but we were in seminary at the same time. I was
Okay.
Actually, she made the Yerushalayim. I don't remember.
Amazing.
It was when I was there.
Lud?
You were our teacher who stuck it out to the end. We had a rotation of teachers. And I remember at the end you said that your Mashpia told you not to stick it out, but you really appreciated our group and you.
But you must have been there the fourth year.
What?
You were there fourth year. In its death throes, yes. My Mashpia told me to quit. Oh. To take that up with him. Okay, say them. I know Rabbi Groner didn't. What's with the Meidalach? That almost made it. It was an amazing. It had amazing potential, but it just something happened. Okay, only good news. Give my regards to Toronto. Very impressed. 11 o'clock at night. Shoot. Okay, questions, answers. Still people out there doing real things. Yeah.
And it was interesting. You reach out to me. PDF is free. The book is donation-based. It's beautiful. It's by Rabbi Hillman. He translated and adapted the works of Boruch. And it's like, it builds up. It's like questions and answers around love and it builds up very logically to make the point of really identifying Mashiach.
Okay, amazing. Enjoy. So we have work to do. But I mean, it's true that the Avodah is not, I mean, the Rebbe says it. The Avodah is not bringing Mashiach per se. The Avodah is to bring Makabel. Again, the Rebbe said that explicitly, that there's an Avodah that's over. We usually say bringing, okay, but so that, but that the most basic understanding of that is that Mashiach's real in our lives. Because that is, I mean, Gimel Tamuz especially. Identity, not identity. I mean, you can, Gimel Tamuz. What's Gimel Tamuz? So the Rebbe explains in Parshas Kerech, Tafshin Nun Aleph. Gimel Tamuz is when it happened, it's unclear what it is, and it's unclear whether it's good or bad. In this case, it's pretty, I mean, it's obviously not something positive. But what is it ultimately? It ultimately becomes the beginning of the process of the Geul of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel Tamuz. So the Rebbe says explicitly. But when it happened, when Gimel Tamuz happened in Tafresh Pei Zayin, so the Chassidim didn't know whether this is good or bad. The Rebbe is going into exile. Who knows what it was going to be? Is this good that the Rebbe is going into exile? Or is this a disaster? They didn't know. Now, and the Rebbe points out, it's very interesting, in a footnote, the Rebbe points out that they also did not, if everybody knew that there had been a death sentence, Rahman al-San, passed against the Frierdiker Rebbe, and that had been commuted, so then everybody would have related to it, obviously, in a positive. But no one knew that. In Tafresh Pei Zayin, no one knew that. The Frierdiker Rebbe told everybody that after, because he saw the paper. That's a nice ring. It's a very nice ring. I didn't want to interrupt it. What? So what did Gimel Tamuz end up being? The beginning of the Geul of Yud Beis and Yud Gimel. So we certainly have fervent hope that our Gimel Tamuz is simply the beginning of the process of Geula. It's longer than 9 days, obviously, but then the Geula is a rather larger scale Geula than the Geula of Yud Beis and Gimel. As amazing and important as that was, but it was still obviously not the ultimate Geula Mitzvah Shlema, which is what we're waiting for. And Gimel Tamuz has its place in that. Right? So there is obviously the pain of Gimel Tamuz. We can't forget that because we want to see the Rebbe. But Gimel Tamuz is clearly part of a process. It's not Chas v'Sholem, the end of something. It's part of a process. Okay, why in the world does this have to be part of the process? Okay, but say that you're asking questions from the Eibishter and you're not necessarily going to get answers. So the question is just sort of a waste of time. Not sort of. It's just a waste of time because we'll never get the answer. Maybe after Yud Beis, Yud Gimel Tamuz in cosmic terms, which is the ultimate revelation of Mashiach and the beginning of Geula Mitzvah Shlema in the most revealed way possible. So it's not simply some conceptual idea that actually happens. Lamatim Yasar Tfachim Mamish Mamish Mamish. So maybe we'll have answers to all these questions. Who knows? But that's not our issue now. Every one of us has to figure out what I can do to somehow push the envelope a little more. And to convince the Eibishter that we really want this to happen. We really want this to happen. And we do want it to happen. But there's also a tree in my head. Right? If you ask us honestly, of course we want Mashiach to come, and certainly Lubavitchers. I mean, certainly Lubavitchers. I mean, on the most basic, and this is, it's very real for us, but in all fairness, it's not the reason we should want Mashiach, but it's still very, very real for us. We just want to see the Rebbe. Now, probably many of us understand that when we see the Rebbe again, he's not exactly going to be the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I mean, he will be, but he won't be. It's going to be a slightly different reality. We think we're going to be in the front row. It's us guys, right? Remember us? I went to Lubavitch Sem, like me. Remember me, Rabbi? I didn't go to Beis Yaakov and all that. I didn't do that. It's me. We sung Arba Babas in Yutes Kislev when the rabbi left the room. That was us. I mean, what are we going to be doing? I remember talking about this once in Shoshana. What are we going to be doing? Rebbe's going to Farbrengen. It's going to be the most amazing event in the history of the Jewish people. It's going to, I mean, it really will be, right? It'll be the culmination of everything else that ever happened. We're going to be putting chairs for all the people in the back rows who just got here a little late. We're going to be getting them chairs and opening up their folding chairs and say, sit. And the Farbrengen's happening up there and we can barely hear. But all the Lubavitchers are going to be opening up chairs for everybody in the back. And who's going to be sitting in the front? Who knows? I mean, be a couple of people sitting in the front thinking they should be in the front. Right? But Kam Hem Yehudim, also Jewish. People in the front. We'll be setting up the,
Okay.
who knows what'll happen with the sound system. So some Lubavitcher, Yenison Hackner is going to run over there and start making sure that the sound system works. Right. We'll have what to do. We'll definitely have what to do. But it's going to be different. It's going to be different. It's going to be better, but it is going to be different. Meaning there are certain things that we're going to have to. We have to be ready to give up things from Mashiach to come, right? Certain things that you've thought about and what you want to do and what you might want to accomplish and what where you're going. And I mean, who says that that's going to have any relevance whatsoever once Mashiach ultimately it's revealed and the process ends? So am I willing to give that up? Okay, I have to give that up. Part of me bringing Mashiach is being willing to give that up.
Once Mashiach comes, that's not even going to be part of.
Oh, 100%. That might be easy once Mashiach comes, right. But since it's a part of it's my tree in my head right now, so then it might be hard for me to give that up. It might be something really small and insignificant. It might just be that, whoa, everything's going to change. Am I ready for that? I mean, do I have the energy to deal with that right now? Well, find the energy, because why should the Jewish people wait just because I'm tired? The whole world, why should the whole world wait? Why should some kid in Rwanda who doesn't have enough to eat, why should he be hungry because I can't get it together to bring Mashiach? Because when Mashiach comes, he's going to have enough to eat. He won't be hungry anymore. So that'll be good for him too. So hopefully I care about him. God created him too. No reason for that little guy to be hungry. But it's something I think we're beyond the how, right? Because none of us know the answer to that question because it's been such I mean, we're still here. Things what?
Things change.
Oh, things have changed a tremendous amount.
Like in process.
Absolutely. I mean, we're closer than we've ever been. 100%. Even though sometimes the Abishah makes things happen and it seems like we're farther away. Okay. When Corona broke out, everybody had their drushes about Corona and its crown and it's going to teach the whole world that the Abishah is in charge and it's fantastic and amazing and incredible. Were we successful at getting the message that the Abishah runs the world out based on the fact that this bizarre thing called Corona happened? I don't see it. We had a golden opportunity. I don't see that. I mean, look, to get it to CNN, okay, so that's already, that's irreverently flourish. But just get, to get out into the base, to get the basic world view of the fact that obviously someone greater than us runs the world because he can stop the world dead in its tracks in 3 days. I don't think that message got out there. I think the people who thought that when it happened still think that. And the people who didn't think that when it happened still don't think that. But you and I thought that. I mean, I think most religious Jews went, oh, wow, this is like really wild. Look at the Abish. That's what everybody was talking about. Okay, and I'd imagine your average religious person in Nebraska was saying the same thing, right? Arkansas, Nebraska. What about the godless hordes in New York, California? What about those godless hordes who make a lot of noise? Did any of them figure this out? Not in the least.
Probably a few.
Oh, that was for sure. But I mean, you know, did anybody who said that message would be considered silly and, you know, just ridiculed? Okay, so I'm sure there were individuals. I'm sure there were Lubavitchers all over America in Chabad, all over the world in Chabad houses, explaining this to individuals or to small groups. I'm not saying that what, you know, this isn't, you know, oh, that we're terrible, we're horrible, and we blew it. It's just, there was this interesting opportunity. How to take advantage of it? I don't know. I mean, it would have been very, very hard because you would have incredible opposition from the powers that be. Because now, in all fairness, it looks like it was orchestrated by the powers that be. That seems to be what happened. Whoa. Anything to get rid of the orange man. Right. Seems to be what was going on. Okay. That being said, we still had an opportunity. Because they, you know, God was still part of it. I mean, it's all of it, but anyway, okay, ladies.
What's a orange man?
There used to be a president of the United States who had orange hair, and he was a very polarizing figure. People either absolutely loved the guy or they absolutely hated the guy. And so, you know, the hate side won. Yeah, right, wrong, and they won. Because he's not president anymore. They really didn't like him. He was good theater, that's for sure. I mean, not living in America, watching America this was the best entertainment imaginable. Watching what was going on over here. It's just like, incredible. The place was just bubbling away. But anyway, he certainly, whatever he did, he got the cat out of the bag. That's for sure. He like opened up all sorts of Pandora's boxes where people stopped pretending. You know, like we're even-handed and we believe in fairness. No. He, you know, to his great credit, he said, no, you don't. And it's obvious they don't. Okay. Which is interesting that he pulled that off. I mean, everything he did was just budget amazing. How did he become president? It was just absolutely absurd. No, the whole thing is just, it's such an incredible, you know, you can hate him, you can like, but the whole story is just it's an absolutely amazing story that this guy, who's just this complete wacko. No, but not that he doesn't get things done. He gets things done, right? He got a lot done, but he's a wacko. His personality is wacko. And he ends up saying, I want to be president of the United States, and he does it against all odds. I mean, how did that happen? He didn't think he was going to be president. I mean, he looked so surprised that day he was walking down to make his victory speech, like, I don't have a speech. Like, why would I have a speech? I'm not supposed to win. But he did it. It's just like unbelievable. I mean, it definitely teaches us a lot about the ability to accomplish things that seem outrageous if you just want to do it and it's right. And you know, he definitely taught a lot of people that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you could. I personally, you know, I really did like the guy. I mean, I think he's a wacko, but I just found I found it so refreshing that someone just wouldn't play the game because it's all the game. And he didn't play the game, and it drove the Republicans as crazy as the Democrats. It drove them all crazy because they're all doing very well in this game. I mean, the guys who are playing the game over there, they're doing very well. They all have their big houses and they're doing just fine. Okay, you guys win, we don't really care because it's a bunch of people who couldn't care less, but we're doing great. This guy comes and just throws the apple cart upside down, right side up, and freaks everybody out. And it was refreshing, I must say that. I just found him so refreshing. I mean, wacko, but just so refreshing. And, I mean, that's at the end of my Twitter account, huh? It's all right, I don't have one. I can't be banned from any of these things because I don't have any. So, Anyway. Whatever. He's also part of the whole thing. Somehow we can learn from him. Amazing. Amazing. You can accomplish a lot if you set your mind to it and you want to make things happen. And as president, he also accomplished a lot. You can like what he accomplished or not like what he accomplished, but he accomplished a tremendous amount because he said this has to get done and he did it. Amazing. A politician who made all sorts of promises before he was president and kept them all. That's just astounding. Whoever heard of such a thing? It's just astounding. And they couldn't handle it. Like they just couldn't handle it. And that's what I found. So, I mean, I was on his team, not the other team, but they couldn't handle it. They won by hook or by crook. They won. Okay. He's gone playing golf. Right? I was talking about it today with two former shluchim of mine, standing on a corner further out of the neighborhood. Right? His effect on Black America. Tens of thousands of new black businesses in America because of the racist president. Tens of thousands. If he had had another 4 years, what effect would he have had on Black America? Forget about everybody else. Black America, what effect would he have had? Could have been a very, very serious and positive effect. Somehow the Abish didn't let him do that. I don't know why. I don't get it. Forget about everybody else. Black America would have really prospered because of him, because he was taking it seriously. Because we all know no one else could care less. The Abish, it's hard to figure out. It's hard to figure out. Okay, same. I mean, now, and it's not, in Eretz Yisrael, it's more than just politics, right? In Eretz Yisrael, it's lives of Jews. And, we have a new government in Eretz Yisrael. Someone said to me yesterday in 770, so how could it possibly be that this government is sworn into power in Eretz Yisrael on Gimel Tamuz? All right, so then he said, because it's going to fall apart on Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tamuz. So the whole thing is just, it's Gimel Tamuz. You never know. What's Gimel Tamuz? It looks pretty bad, though. I mean, this doesn't, it'll all become clear in 9 days, the whole thing. Who knows? Who knows? But we all these things are they're not unimportant, right? I mean, there was it's very interesting because they made an announcement. I guess it was Leil Shabbos. It must have been Friday night. They made a big announcement in 770 about, the Rebbe wanting people to vote. There's, I guess there's some election around here. It's like mayor and all that, right? That's happening evidently fairly soon in New York. And so someone stood on the bima, made a very large announcement in the name of the Rabbonim and in the name of the Vadakal that people should vote. They have to vote. The Rebbe wants people to vote. And they mentioned who they should vote for council. They didn't talk about mayor, they talked about a particular councilman who's very pro us, and the one he's running against is a big anti-Semit. So that they said that's very, very clear. Okay, so the Rebbe definitely wants us to be part of that. But I mean, as much as we're part of that, hopefully we don't spend too much of our intellectual energy and emotional energy in it, because there's other things that we have to do. And every single one of us has to figure out, what can I do to somehow hasten the end of Golus? And we are able to do that, which I think is one of the hard things for us to really understand. I'll tell you one quick story and then we're ending. A pleasure. A pleasure. I'll tell you one quick story and then I will thank Michal before I tell the story. Thank you very much for putting this together. It's incredibly heartwarming to sit with all these amazing people. I heard a story at the beginning of the COVID times in Eretz Yisrael. So there were Farbrengens every night, first on the phone, and then it turned into Zoom. It started on the phone. One night, Rabbi Vashansky, it's funny because the guy who was putting it together asked me to Farbrengen on the phone one night. So I said, well, I can't. I had a class on Zoom that night. So he said, no. You don't have to talk then. Just record 3 15-minute things and I'll make the. I said, really? That's what's happening? She said, well, no, not every night. Sometimes the person's actually on the phone talking and sometimes it's just recording and then he would go, thank you very much. That's an amazing thing. And then he would say a few things and then right? So really, that's what. I was like shocked. But anyway, so I don't know whether Rabbi Vashansky was actually talking to us or he was recorded. I don't know. But he told an amazing story. He told an amazing. It's funny because a friend of mine heard me Farbrengen, but I didn't hear me Farbrengen because I was doing something else when I was Farbrengen on the phone, which is really. So he called me up and said, that was really interesting. I told one of the things, I don't know, it was 3 different things, 15 minutes. That's what he told me to do. So the middle one was whatever it was, some story. So someone called me up, amazing story. I said, oh, what? It was on? I said, like, what do you mean it was on? Like, weren't you there? I said, well, it's a long story. No, you phoned in and you hear someone talking. What do you assume? That they're talking on the phone, right? That's what I assumed until I found out the inside. But he told an amazing story, and I'm going to leave you with this story. But it's a story that hopefully you will never leave, and none of us will ever leave because it's very, very, it's very challenging. But it's also, I hope you find it very uplifting. Rabbi Vashansky, I assume he heard this from Rabbi Groner himself. Rabbi Yitzchak David Groner of Australia, was in Chassidus by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked him to do something. And he said to the Rebbe, I don't think I can. Meaning, I don't think I'll be successful in doing that. Now, it's unclear to me whether he felt he couldn't or it can't get done. But he said, I don't think I can do, meaning the people who he has to do it with, but bottom line, he had to do it. He said, I don't think I can do that. I really don't think I'll be successful. And the Rebbe said, you're my shaliach. I'm with you and I can. Wow. You're my shaliach. I'm with you and I can. You might not be able to. I get it. I can. And I'm going to be there with you. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say to the Eibishter? I don't think I can do that. What did the Eibishter say to him? I can, and I'll be there. That's what he said with him. He said, I'm going to be with you. That's what the Eibishter said to Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? I'm going to be with you. All right? Whoa. You're my shaliach, I'm with you, and I can. And if we live our lives with the understanding that we're the shluchim of the Rebbe and he's with us, we will be just fine. And we will bring Mashiach. And that's not always so easy, right? It's not always so easy to live life that way. It sounds easy and perfect when we're sitting in Farbrengen, but in the heat of the battle. But that's when we have to do it, is in the heat of the battle, when we're talking to our children, when we're dealing with our students, when we're dealing with our teachers, when we're dealing with our boss, when we're dealing with ourselves, when we do whatever we're doing. We have to realize that, hold on a second. Who am I? I'm Chassid of the Rebbe. So what does that mean on a certain level? I'm a Shaliach of the Rebbe, because Shaliach doesn't mean that you're on a computer base on Eastern Parkway. Shaliach means that you're someone who sees you've been sent by a Kadosh Boruch Hu to accomplish something, and as a Chassid of the Rebbe, so you understand that the Rebbe wants something from you. Okay, and if you're doing that which the Rebbe wants from you, then the Rebbe is with you. And whatever the Rebbe wants to do, he can do. How he does it, I don't know. I don't think we understand these things. I lied. I'll tell you another story. I didn't, it wasn't that. I heard that Rabbi Klein told this story. That there's a family in Williamsburg called the Schwartz family. They had an interesting job. When the Rebbe from Toldos Aaron in Yerushalayim, Meisharim, striped coats. Right? When the Rebbe from Toldos Aaron used to want to, he's passed away. When the Rebbe from Toldos Aaron wanted to be in contact with the Rebbe, he would be in contact with the Schwartz family and send a message to the Rebbe through them, and they would take that message to Rabbi Klein, and Rabbi Klein would give it to the Rebbe. And if the Rebbe wanted to answer, so the Rebbe would give Rabbi Klein something to give to the Schwartzes, and the Schwartz family would send it to the Rebbe from Toldos Aaron. That's how, and evidently he was extremely close to the Rebbe and was in contact with the Rebbe a lot, which is really interesting. So Rabbi Klein told this story in Farbrengen. Said that he was once in his office. His office is the one as you walk into 770, right to the right. That was his office, the long, thin office. Rabbi Groner was all the way on the other side of the Rebbe's office. So Rabbi Klein was in the office. This is 10 years after Gimel Tamuz. And he finds a letter from Mr. Schwartz stuck in some corner in the office. And it's, from 10 years ago, the letter. So he can't believe it. He looks and he sees a letter from Mr. Schwartz. But he doesn't open it. It's not, so he calls up the family and says, "You won't believe this, but I just," he calls up and he asks for Mr. Schwartz or Rabbi Schwartz, whatever. And they say, he's not here, he's in the hospital. First they say, who was this? Rabbi Klein from Lubavitch. So he's not here, he's in the hospital. So he said, "Well, you won't believe this, but I just found a letter from the Rebbe for your husband from 10 years ago, but it was lost in the office. It was just in a crack, and I just found it." So she said, "Oh my goodness, okay." So I think they used to just come get the letter. So they came to Rabbi Klein. They took the letter and they went home. And he's in the hospital. He just had a heart attack. He's fine, but he had a heart attack. So he was in the hospital. There's a letter from the Rebbe. They phoned up Rabbi Klein and told him what happened. They opened up the letter. The Rebbe is giving a refuah shleima to Mr. Schwartz, who had never been sick before. And the Rebbe put in the letter $7, one for each child. When the Rebbe wrote the letter, they had 4 or 5 children. When they got the letter, they had 7 children. 10 years later, it got lost in the office. After Gimel Tamuz, they got that letter with $7 bills for the 7 children, which they did not have on the date the letter was sent, and a refuah shleima for Mr. Schwartz, who was not sick when the letter was sent, but sure was when he got it. Figure that out. So next time you think you understand the Lubavitcher Rebbe, we haven't got a clue. Rabbi Groner once said, I remember it was Shabbos Mevarchin Chodesh Tamuz, Tafshin Nun Hey. Rabbi Groner and his wife were in Vancouver. It's a year after Gimel Tamuz. They're in Vancouver, and I was visiting my parents in Vancouver. And Friday night, the Shaliach had his biggest balabatim to his house with the Groners, and he asked me if I wanted to come. So of course I did. So I sat next to Rabbi Groner, but on the side where his wife was with the ladies at the table, because I wanted to hear Mrs. Groner too, because she has a lot to say. She flew these ladies away. These are all Vancouver ladies. I haven't got a clue what Yiddishkeit is. They're very nice people. They give a lot of stuff out of it, but they're very Jewish, but they really don't understand Yiddishkeit. And Mrs. Groner walked out of Russia with her family when she was 3. So they asked her, how is life different after Gimel Tamuz? They didn't say Gimel Tamuz. So she said, well, I get to see my husband, and we never ever would travel to Vancouver for Shabbos in the old, before Gimel Tammuz, but now we can do that. So these women are thinking, wow, Gimel Tammuz is the best day in this lady's life, right? Like she, gets to travel with her husband. And then Mrs. Groner said, oh, I'd give anything to see the Rebbe again. These women were just completely like, what? Who is this Martian? Like, where, who is this woman? Where is she coming from? But Rabbi Groner said something interesting. One of the businessmen, very, very successful businessman, asked, one of those questions. Well, Rabbi, what was the Lubavitcher Rebbe really like? One of those questions. But that's what he said. What was the Lubavitcher Rebbe really like? So Rabbi Groner said an amazing thing. He started to cry when he said it. He said, I'll tell you, I was next to the Rebbe for many hours every day for over 40 years. Then he started to cry and he said, I never understood what was happening on the other side of those eyes. He said, I never understood it. All I knew was what I was told to do. So I did it, but I never understood what was really going on. Now, Rabbi Groner was right there. That's why he was a chassid, because he realized he didn't understand. It could be that you're right there and you think, oh, I understand everything and I'm seeing it all and I'm really, on the ins. He understood that he understood less than anybody else because right? I mean, he was right there, so he could really see those eyes all the time. And he said, I never understood what's going on the other side of those eyes. So we want to see our Rebbe again. If only for that, let's get it together and figure out what we have to do to bring Mashiach. I don't pretend to have any eitzes. I mean, I had one eitz at the beginning about calling up a Jew to make them happy. But every single one of us has to just think about it and really think about it and make certain positive hachlotas in kamus, eichus, both, quantity, quality, whatever. But to definitely make sure, I won't say refocus because I'm sure this is what you're all focused on, but I'll say refocus just because I can talk to myself too, to refocus on what we're really here for. And that's what Gimel Tamuz is all about, is to make sure that we're not living the tree, not living the branch that hit our head. We're connected to the Einoid Milvade of it all. The branch is also part of Einoid Milvade, but in the story, it's not. I don't know whether it's a story or not. I guess it's a mushal. I don't know, whatever it is. I am so excited that I'm going to get to sleep before 4 o'clock tonight. I can't tell you. I just don't know. I think I'm just going to lay in bed and I'll read Fox News for 4 hours or something. Just to, I'll read old Fox News about Donald Trump. I mean, it'll be as entertaining as ever. He really said that? Wow, unbelievable.
No one's throwing anything at you in the.
Yeah. I'll be off Twitter. I heard that an English professor was suspended by Twitter for writing that men can't have children. They're mad, absolutely mad. It's beyond belief. Right. What's that thing about, you say I'm crazy? Whatever that is. Say to ladies, an unbelievable pleasure. Thank you for keeping me off the street tonight. And I can't say I'm I want to go see my wife, obviously. Mayanot is starting Wednesday afternoon. Looking forward to the summer program and all that. And that's shlichus, and that's really what I'm supposed to be doing. But I must say, having a very good time in Crown Heights. Just hanging out with Lubavitchers all day and sitting at 770. It's just, it's like a dream come true. But the dream is really to bring the Rebbe there to Israel, and that should happen Teka for Miyad. And then 770 will be right there next to the base of Mikdash, and we can, there'll be French ladies with needles in the women's section, just for old time's sake, so everybody can remember what it was like. I was never in the women's section. I never got a needle from a French lady, but I've just heard about it.
Heard about it.
Right, heard about it. Well, it's one of those things that men always felt bad about that, we never experienced. So, okay.
Thank
I
you.
don't